Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 44, Holloway versus Allen, also known as UFC Kansas City. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Real look behind the curtain for the listeners. We're recording this on Sunday, going into fight week. So you and I talked, 18 hours ago in the wake of the insane finish of UFC 287. You mentioned to me you had a little trouble getting to sleep after that. I was certainly wired. And of course, when that show finishes, I'm just in the middle of my workday anyway. So yeah, it feels like we just barely talked. And we go from that, maybe our knockout of the year, something that's going to go down as one of the defining moments in MMA in 2023, into UFC Kansas City. Talk to me a little bit about this card overall, man.
It is what it is. For fight night, I'll give it like a C. And the reason why I give it a better grade than it probably deserves is the main event is spectacular. It is as good of a main event you can get for a fight night.
Yes.
I'll say this, though, about the main event. If I'm booking matches in that division, I'm not making that matchup, because if Max Holloway wins and Alex Volkanovski beats Yair Rodriguez just announced, like, you can't book Max Holloway against, he's not going to beat him a fourth time. But so it's they're taking a lot of risk, like putting Arnold Allen in this fight. And now if Yair Rodriguez wins, Holloway's right back in the picture, so that works out good. But but I want to say that stylistically, it's a fantastic main event. The rest of the card is not the most talent-rich card, but I will say this. It's good matchmaking in the sense there isn't a single easy, like, what's an easy fight to pick on the entire card?
Oh, there are 3 or 4 pick'ems on this card on the odds.
I think we have 14 pick'ems. I don't know what the betting odds are, but I'm saying, like, there's not a single guy fighting on this card. If he wins, I go, or he or she, I go, oh wow, I didn't expect that. Like, it's a really evenly matched fight card. So that is, to me, I'm usually excited about that.
Agreed. There are no obvious squash matches on this one. The prelims are, in terms of rankings and divisional relevance, super low level. Brandon Royval and Matheus Nicolau are the only people on the undercard that are even close to ranked. They are ranked, but the rest of that undercard is...
Yeah. Why isn't that the co-main event?
I don't know. I don't know, because for one, it's a higher level fight in terms of rankings. Number two, it's going to be nuts. Brandon Royval, has never had a boring fight.
No.
Matheus Nicolau has never had a boring fight. That's dynamite. Yeah, I don't get it either, but it does spice up the prelims a little bit. Outside of that,
when Brandon Royval goes to bed, I don't think he just pulls down his covers and just puts one leg in, and he Minari rolls into his bed and stuff.
He has a trampoline in his doorway. He just jumps off that, drops a flying elbow onto this.
He's like a luchador, like a real MMA version of Rey Mysterio or one of the Rob Van Dam or one of those guys.
Yeah. We've got the debut of Gaston Bolanos, a guy who probably turns off his bedroom light with a spinning elbow on his way to bed.
How random is he being in the UFC? I didn't see that coming.
Neither did I. The UFC just doesn't pick up much talent from Bellator, and if they were going to grab somebody, he didn't seem like the most obvious choice, but I'm happy to have him around, because his main problem in Bellator was they couldn't never get him fights. He had 4 or 5 fights canceled on him in the last 2 years. So I'm glad he's getting to a place, the UFC bantamweight division, where he, is definitely gonna have a busy dance card. Okay, so I think the answer is pretty obvious, because you sort of mentioned it, talking about how much depends on the Yair Rodriguez title shot. But outside of the main event, who's closest to a title shot in their division with a win on Saturday? Is it probably Royval or Nicolau?
Yeah, I think it's Nicolau. He's got big wins in the division. If he beats Royval, I think he's closer of those two to getting a title shot. And that division obviously is wide open. There's nobody way ahead of the pack or anything. So if Nicolau's fighting for the, or really actually Royval too, either one of those guys are fighting for the title, then the next fight, like that wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I mean, Nicolau, he left the UFC and came back, but since he's been back, he's 4-0. If he gets a top 10 win in Royval, it'd be hard to deny him. I think you're probably right on that one. Did you say you give this one a C or a C plus?
Yeah, like a C. What do you give it?
I would agree. I think it's a C plus. The only thing I ding it for is, considering that this is the UFC going back to Kansas City for the first time in a pretty good while, there's a decided lack of geographical relevance here. I mean, there's no fighter from Kansas or Missouri on the entire main card. You have to go all the way down to like TJ Brown, who's really from Arkansas and just trained out of Glory for a long time. Yeah. I mean, they brought back Zak Cummings after like 3 years away. Zak Cummings versus Ed Herman. That's a matchup from 2019, isn't it?
Oh Lord, yeah. 2016 maybe. Yeah. Ben, are you wearing a Wu-Tang shirt? Is that what you're wearing right there?
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Let's cause a debate and let's put this in the chat.
Okay.
Who's the best Wu-Tang member?
Oh,
there's only 4 answers that it's even acceptable.
I mean, quality of material, it's Jizza. Like, he always had my favorite verses on the actual Wu songs. I still think Liquid Swords is the best Wu solo album, even though he doesn't have near the huge body of work as like, Method or somebody.
Yeah, Method's the most commercialized, but yeah, no.
I mean, Method's got more movies than Jizza has albums now.
Yeah, Jizza is one of the 4 acceptable answers, so I'm glad. Method Man to me is not one of the more acceptable answers. To me, like, people ask me who was my favorite Wu-Tang member. Like, I'm that's one thing I have to tell you. I'm big into like 90s hip hop.
That
was the glory days of hip hop.
Yeah.
And white guy from Rhode Island. So how do I really know? But to me, like the 4 guys, it's Ghost, Raekwon, Jizza, and Inspector Deck. I think lyrically I like Inspector Deck.
And Deck's super underrated.
Oh yeah.
He didn't have one of the huge oversized personalities. He was like one of the most normal rappers in the group.
But he gets on a song and he wrecks it every time.
Yeah.
But I like Ghost and I like Raekwon, and I mean I like all of them. They're all fantastic. I'll 9 or 10 if you want to throw in Capadonna. They're all good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Here's another debate. We get that debate going. How about this one? We're in Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
Do they have the best barbecue? Isn't that the big thing? Kansas City barbecue?
Kansas City barbecue is very. I enjoy Kansas City style barbecue. I do. I mean, I'm partial to Texas barbecue just because it's real heavy on beef. Like I like smoked brisket, but if I just want some ribs or some pulled pork, I mean, give me Kansas City style any day.
Isn't Memphis really big too?
Memphis is big on barbecue. There's a
debate like Kansas, Memphis, and Texas.
Yeah.
I've only been to Texas, and I didn't have barbecue, which was kind of a shame. Like I was in a big group. We did go to like a steakhouse, and the steakhouse was incredible. It was in Fort Worth. It was fantastic. I love. It was in like a old like cow. It was right. You've been to Fort Worth, like the touristy, like the stockyards, the touristy area.
Yeah,
which I absolutely loved. And there was like in an old like saloon, and you sat in like a big circle table and stuff.
That's the most Fort Worth thing ever. Yeah,
I love that. We all had cowboy hats on. I made a joke with my wife, dead serious. I literally did this before I was going down. I put a cowboy hat on, and I said I'm not taking it off. I'm not not wearing a cowboy hat until I return home. Like I was in Boston wearing a cowboy hat, like on a plane wearing a cowboy hat every single day, wearing a cowboy hat on the flight home in the cowboy hat.
That's amazing.
I should have thought of that. I should have put a cowboy. Next time they're in Texas, gotta wear a cowboy hat for the show.
All right. All right. With that detour through 90s hip hop and barbecue, shall we dive into these prelims? We've put it off long enough.
And whoever argues, if you argue that one barbecue is over the other, you have to send us like
Yeah.
some like a jar of of some kind of sauce or something to prove it.
Yeah, I'm down with that. Like, it's useless without evidence. Come on, folks.
That's right.
All right. First off, at UFC Kansas City, the reason why Keith and I just talked about 90s hip hop and barbecue for 10 minutes, a bantamweight matchup between Joselyne Edwards and Lucie Pudilova. Edwards, the 27-year-old Panamanian by way of Los Angeles, is 12-4 overall. She's 3-2 in the UFC. 3-2 in the UFC. She is on a 2-fight win streak. She has back-to-back wins last year over Ramona Pascual in June, and then Ji-Yeon Kim in July at UFC 277. Those were a unanimous decision and a split decision, respectively. Those allowed Edwards to get back on track after back-to-back losses to Carl Hossa and Jesse Clark in 2021. She will try to make it 3 straight against the returned Pudilova. 28-year-old Czech is 14-7 overall. She's 3-5 in the UFC, but she was cut from the UFC back in 2020 after going 2-5. She went back to Octagon MMA, which is the top promotion in her home country, went on a pretty good streak there, and was re-signed by the UFC last summer. She fought at UFC 278 in August, knocking out Wu Yanan in the second round. Odds here, fairly close. As Keith alluded during our intro, most of these fights are extremely close. There may only be like 1 or 2 2-1 or greater favorites. This is not one of them. Pudilova minus 140, Edwards plus 110 as the slight underdog. Keith, I look at these two women and I see two women with legit bantamweight physiques and some decent physical tools, but neither of them has beaten even a decent bantamweight ever, period. And they've had plenty of chances. I'm kind of surprised that Lucie Pudilova is still only 28 years old. When she came back to the UFC, I assumed she'd be like 34 or 35 or something. So it just goes to show that, I mean, she was cut pretty young, but she went 5-1 or 6-1 back in Octagon MMA before she got re-signed, but it was against super low level competition. The one decent woman she fought over there, Talita Bernardo, beat her. She still looks to me like the woman who got choked out by Antonina Shevchenko, that got kind of pushed around by Liz Carmouche and Justine Kish. She's still the same woman. I mean, she looks big. She's 5'8" and kind of built, but beating Wu Yanan might just be her. I mean, that might just be her ceiling there. And same for Edwards. Edwards has promising physical tools. Like, her kicks are fast and hard. Like, she's a solid kickboxer, but she's had terrible takedown defense since she's been in the UFC, and that just hasn't improved. She's on back-to-back wins, but they're over arguably the two worst women in the division in Ramona Pascual and Ji-Yeon Kim. Like, Ji-Yeon Kim, that was, I think, her 4th straight loss. Pascual bouncing back and forth between 135 and 145, hasn't looked good at either. And I think Edwards even blew weight for the Kim fight. I mean, this is about as low level a fight as you can get in the UFC bantamweight division.
Way to sell the show, Ben.
In case people were wondering why we were, running down our top, like, Wu-Tang solo albums and top MCs. If this plays out the way Edwards wants it, it's going to be a distance kickboxing match where she can just kind of keep Pudilova at range with a long jab, use a lot of her kicks. Edwards isn't super tall, but she fights pretty long. Like, she likes kicking at kicking range. She does try to use a long jab. And I think it's probably because she senses that she's vulnerable to being taken down. Pudilova's worst instincts will oblige her with exactly that kind of fight. But I'm inclined to think that Pudilova's going to end up taking her down, even if just almost by accident. Just, as they collide and clinch, it's going to end up on the ground. And there, Edwards has proven kind of willing to fight off her back for too long. Give me Pudilova by decision here, and I think it'll probably be kind of an ugly fight.
When you talked about them, like, getting taken down by accident. I was just thinking about like a couple ice skating, holding hands, and like they slip and they both fall on top of each other, all weird and stuff. I think I'd rather see Edwards and Pudilova ice skate than fight each other. I'm gonna go with the Czech fighter when it comes to the ice skating over the fighter from Panama, but Pudilova, you said, was the favorite, right?
Slightly, -140.
Okay. I was just really wondering who's the favorite of this one.
It wouldn't surprise me if those odds were flipped, though. Like, just
yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if Vegas just said, "F it, we're not taking bets on this fight." You know. Edwards is a humongous fighter for the weight class, especially when she doesn't make weight. That too. Yeah. But she's long and lengthy. She's a Muay Thai striker. Good volume, fast hands. Everything she throws comes from her hips, though, as she keeps her hands low. I'd say plus power, hard kicks. She loves to go to the body, loves teep kicks. She likes that John Jones oblique kick. She does make the mistake of throwing naked leg kicks, so she's open to counters. She also avoids shots by pulling her head straight back. She was hurt to the body by Ramona Pascal, which is not a good sign, considering she might be the worst fighter in the UFC. She's got a strong plum clinch because of how big she is. It's so easy to toss up knees and like those little short elbows. She will go for a takedown, which is surprising because she is one of the worst defensive wrestlers in the UFC. To her credit, she's so big that she has like a Derek Lewis ability to get back up because of how big she is. But she will spend some time going for subs off her back. And she does have 3 submissions to her credit. Now, Pudilova, she's pretty big for the weight class too. Not like huge like Edwards, but on the feet, she's a boxer. Good movement, a lot of L stepping, uses feints well, works behind a jab. Just not spectacular. Just basic 1-2s down the pipe. She will wrestle. Like we saw that in her last fight, but she's also a weak defensive wrestler. She has a submission. She has a couple submission wins, but I think her last submission win was 7 years ago. So there's not a lot of stalking that. And as you mentioned, she was submitted by Antonina Shevchenko. Yeah, that was Antonina Shevchenko, not Valentina. It's a really hard fight to pick because both are bad. I agree with you. Pudilova probably has the edge in wrestling, but I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go the underdog. I'm going to go with Edwards. I think she lands better shots on the feet. I think she keeps Pudilova at bay with her kicks. I think this is going to be a close one. I think it's going to be a very ugly one, but I'll say Edwards wins a split decision.
All right. So we have some dissension. Sorry, not dissension. We have some disagreement right off the bat at UFC Kansas City. Next up at UFC on ESPN 44 is a men's bantamweight matchup between Aaron Phillips and the debuting Gaston Bolanos. Phillips, the 33-year-old Louisiana native, is 12-4 overall. He's 0-3 across 2 stints with the UFC. He went 0-2 in the UFC all the way back in early 2014. Got the callback in 2020. The unfortunate task ahead of him was Jack Shore. He got tapped out in the second round there. Here, almost 3 full years later, he gets one more shot at his first UFC win. Standing in his way will be a gentleman also looking for his first octagon win in the form of Bolanos. The 30-year-old Peruvian, by way of the California, Bay Area, is 6-3 overall. All 9 of those fights have taken place in the round Bellator cage. Bolanos, one of Bellator's, more quiet homegrown talents, but gets signed late last year, makes his debut here in April. His last fight over in Bellator was against Daniel Carey at Bellator 277 in LA. He knocked out Carey late in the first round. Here, he steps in and he is right away pretty comfortable favorite. He's -190, Phillips +160 on the comeback. Aaron Phillips, he's always a fun fighter, but honestly, I was mildly surprised to see him fight again at all. He struck me as a guy who might have just quietly retired because I mean, he's a very good Louisiana regional fighter. And just, by way of geography, for those who don't know, Aaron Phillips is from Lafayette, Louisiana. Lafayette is as close to me as Dallas is. I mean, that's how big Texas is, and that's how close the Louisiana border is to me. Lafayette's about 3 hours away. So is Dallas.
You can drive through my state 3 times in 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up in Maryland. I could drive to Philadelphia in 2.5 hours, New York in about 4.5, Boston, maybe 7. Like, I could drive for 13 hours and not get out of Texas if I go west.
That's crazy. I could drive 13 minutes to be out of my state. Like, depending seriously, which direction you drive. I guess you could do that any state. Like, you can do that in Alaska if you're on the border, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
but all the borders of Rhode Island are pretty close. Yeah. I mean, anyway, because of that, I'm familiar with the kind of shows that Aaron Phillips has fought at. He runs his own gym. Like, if you look at his little entry on the cards beneath our faces right here, Head Kicks MMA is his own gym, and he has a pretty good stable of up and coming pros and amateurs there that are fighting in smaller promotions in Louisiana and Texas. And coming up on 3 years since he had fought, I just kind of figured that Aaron Phillips quietly wouldn't fight again. So surprised to see him back, but it'll be fun to have him. And speaking of fun to have him, Gaston Bolanos it's a Peruvian thing. Like, Peruvians are the new Koreans. You remember, like, in 2005 through 2010, anytime you had a South Korean fighter come through, this guy's going to be a wild man. Peruvian fighters are just generally wild men. You got your, like, Luis Palomino type. Gaston Bolanos is an all spinning shit all the time guy, and it should be real fun to have him in the UFC. He came up against his limit in Bellator, just against strikers who are fundamentally sound enough not to get caught by that stuff, and people like Solo Hatley that were able to wrestle him. I don't think Aaron Phillips can do either. So I'm kind of thinking we get Gaston Bolanos into the UFC with a performance bonus as he just crushes Aaron Phillips with one of his patented spinning back elbows and gets all kinds of hype going right out of the gate. Give me Bolanos by second round TKO.
I would feel so bad for Bellator if Bolanos wins in spectacular fashion and gets all this hype. They've been trying to build him up for years. I think lower level, like, fight nights, we should put stakes on things. Like, Aaron Phillips has his gym and he has all his followers, and if Bolanos beats him, they have to, like, all the students has to go with Bolanos. They have to go to Peru and train there. So, like Cobra Kai. Like Cobra Kai.
I was gonna say it's like totally for Cobra Kai.
But then all of a sudden Jack Shore shows up later and starts helping Phillips build him back up.
Hey, and I mean, it's worth noting
he goes to prison instead.
Bolanos, he's from Peru, but he's trained in Dublin, California, which is in the East Bay. I mean, forever. And one of his teammates is Amber Leibrock, who just re-entered the Sherdog featherweight women's rankings, this week. Yeah. So
how long does it take you to drive to Dublin?
I think both Dublins, Dublin, Ireland, and Dublin, California, are about equally far from me. So.
All right, I can't put this off much longer. Yeah, I mean, Phillips, it's so hard to grasp, what he does, because he's been obviously so inactive. What we last seen him, he's a southpaw. He moves well, lots of movement. He sets up his shots with a lot of feints. Some fights we've seen him, he's a bit of a slow starter, but he does build as the fight goes along. Fast hands, I'd say. He's pretty athletic. Nice jab, good kicks, fast high kick. Defensively, he drops his hands a lot. In his last fight against Jack Shore, he was easily taken down. But, I mean, in finish, Jack Shore easily takes down pretty much anybody who's not top 15 level fighter. To his credit, he did get back up before Jack Shore finally ended that fight. Bolanos also moves, constantly switching stances, which goes well with those spinning attacks because, you don't know if he's switching stance and then all of a sudden it's spinning back elbow. I say he's a distance striker, cuts angles pretty well. He does fight behind a high guard defense. Good power, like all his wins come by knockout. The kicks are a big part of his game. Tip kicks, calf kicks. He will wrestle a little bit, but he's definitely not a wrestler by any means. This one of these fights, you have 14 fights on the card. I kind of wish I spent more time doing tape study on this until I started watching them, and then I said, "No, I don't want to."
I'm good.
I don't really like either fighter, but I do know Bolanos has power and he has nice kicks. So I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna say Bolanos lands a big shot. I'm not gonna go, he lands a spinning back elbow or something like that, but I say he lands a big shot. I say he knocks out Phillips in the very first round.
All right. 2 picks for Gaston Bolanos to have a successful and perhaps award-winning UFC debut. The UFC Kansas City prelims soldier on with a women's strawweight matchup between Bruna Brasil and Denise Gomes. Brasil, the 29-year-old, Brazilian, is 8-2-1 overall. This will be her UFC debut. She appeared on Dana White's Contender Series last September, where she knocked out the previously undefeated Marnik Man with a head kick in the second round. It was one of the highlight moments of last season, just laid her out with a kick right to the face. She will look to make a successful debut against Gomes, a fellow alum of last season of Dana White's Contender Series, who is also looking for her first octagon win still. She won back in August, unanimous decision over Ryan Dos Santos, made her debut like 4 or 5 weeks later against Loma Lookboonmee and dropped a unanimous decision. So this is her second shot at a first UFC win. She is not favored to do so. Brazil minus 205 as one of the rare 2-1 favorites on the card. Gomes plus 175. Yeah, I gotta say, I don't know if Bruna Brasil's birth certificate actually says Bruna Brasil on it. We have plenty of Brazilian fighters who, like Johnny Walker is not Johnny Walker's actual first and last name. We get those occasionally, but if your last name is the name of your country and your first name alliterates with it, that just sounds like the stage name of a porno star. Like, I'm sorry, Bruna Brasil to fight Amy America and Meg Mexico, and
you are an expert when it comes to porn. So
I am. Like, I'm not an expert, just a connoisseur.
That's your other really more popular podcast when you're breaking down the porno techniques.
I really go deep on that one. I'm sorry, dude.
It's Easter,
Bruna Brasil.
Man. Come on. Holy moly. I gotta go back to church.
I mean, it all goes back to good old Aaron Dick Delaware Brink. If your last name is a place and your first name is an alliterative phrase with that, I'm gonna say that's not your real name until I have proof otherwise. Anyway, I mean, talk to me about this fight. Bruna Brasil got to the UFC with a spectacular knockout. I mean, she didn't have to lift her foot very far to head kick a 4'9" woman, but I mean, tell me more about these women.
Yeah, that's the thing that's tough. The fighter that she fought was, I don't think she was close to UFC level, so it's hard. She looked fantastic though in that fight, in fairness. And Gomes, I thought she looked good too. Gomes is, she's a kickboxer who's very aggressive on her feet, marches down her foes, good head movement. Though she also pillars for defense. She is heavy on her front foot, which generates power to kind of, to land shots, but obviously opens her up to her calf kicks. She loves her overhand right. She sits on her punches to draw power. She has good calf kicks herself. DC kept pointing out that she has a really good high kick. He pointed out on the Contender Series as that's one of her best tools. It seems like a theme of tonight already is spinning attacks. She likes to throw a lot of spinning attacks. She kept throwing this like stupid spinning wheel kick on the Contender Series, which I didn't like. She's very physically strong. She does need to improve her defensive wrestling. She looks for a switch when someone shoots in deep on her hips, which simply, generally speaking, obviously don't like show me videos where it works, but generally speaking, switches don't work in MMA simply because of the rule sets in MMA. You can lock your hands in MMA when you're going for a takedown. Well, when you hit the canvas in amateur wrestling, you cannot lock hands. So that helps to land a switch. She also got headlocked by Loma Lookboonmee a bunch of times in their fight, which is concerning. Though I think we've talked about Loma Lookboonmee's wrestling really improving. She's got a good get-up game, and despite all these big things she does, spinning attacks, throwing hard, she doesn't gas out. So I like that. Now, Bruna Brasil, you know, I think it's a little insulting that you would question her, you know, if that's her last name, because, you know, I think Brazilians generally, I mean, they're very honest people when it comes to their last name. Like Patricio Pitbull is obviously his last. Pitbull's obviously his last name, and Patricky Pitbull. I mean, they're brothers. Obviously, that's why they're the same last name. You know. Bruno Brazil is, you know, she's very athletic. That's something that stands out to me when I saw her. Explosive, kickboxer. She does hang her. She has very like weird hand placement. Like she keeps them low, but also keeps it like wide, which is very weird. That said, she sets up her strikes a lot with like shoulder rolls and feints, good kicks, fast hands. Landed a spectacular high kick, like walk-off high kick knockout on the Contender Series, as you mentioned. She likes spinning attacks. She can get some takedowns. Incredible clinch throw she landed on the Contender Series matchup, though she does prefer to be a striker than a wrestler. Weaker defensive wrestling, but when she got taken down, she did hit a sweep. And she does have 2 submission wins, you know, in a fairly young MMA career. I actually think both fighters are pretty good additions, I think, to the UFC. I think they're both fun. I think the odds are way off in this one. I think they're very similar style. You know, what they do is very similar. I think this should be a pick'em fight. You know, this we've said this a million times. This isn't a betting show. I don't even like making suggestion betting, but if I was making a bet, I would go with Gomes based on the odds. Like, I think she has a better chance of winning than that. I am going to go with Brazil because she is the better athlete of them two. At least I think she is. I think she also might have the edge on the offensive wrestling on the ground. So I'm going to go with Brazil by decision. I think she'll be a little quicker. But if Gomes wins, I think she should, like, you know, she's also from Brazil. She should get the last name of Brazil if she wins.
And just Bruna will have to call herself something else.
Just Bruna, like the missing
Bruce
last
Bruna.
name. Bruna. And then she just keep doing that. They keep winning, and she gets somebody else's last name.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with you in that Gomes. I think she's better, or at least has more upside than she showed against Loma. I mean, she's coming in. That was, you know, super short turnaround. That was 4 weeks after she won on the Contender Series. And she's going against someone in Loma that, I mean, Loma isn't a perfect fighter, but she presents a very specific set of challenges, and she'd be a tough person to face on short notice. Just, I mean, the things she does are so unique, and her build is so unique.
She's tough on any notice, really.
Yes, that's a good point.
You have full camp, and it's Loma's good. Like, let's be honest. Loma's like one of our girls.
Oh, for sure.
Like, we love Loma. Carrie, I interrupt you again.
Loma's fantastic. And the thing about Denise Gomes is when like her own physical tools and her tendencies would make her kind of a similar fighter to Loma, but she just came up against a better version of that, again, on fairly short notice. Denise Gomes, when you realize that she is someone who's from Paraná, Vale Tudo, it makes all the sense in the world, because she looks like a cross between every woman who's from that camp, like just Carl Hosa and Jessica Andrade. She just, like, you mash all them together and you get Denise Gomes, but she doesn't have quite the same physical bully in her that Hosa or Andrade do. And part of it might be that she's so young. I mean, she's just 23 years old. She's nowhere near like what her cap will be as far as just raw physical strength. And I mean, who knows, 5 years from now, maybe she's a flyweight and she's filled out a bit, and like she's really like embodied that PRVT style. But here I'm with you. I think this fight should be close to a pick'em. I think the line is probably a little exaggerated just because of that Bruna Brasil highlight. And I mean, this isn't meant to like dump on Marnik Man, but I mean, she's one of the lowest level undefeated fighters I've seen come to the UFC. Like, you don't come, or I mean, to the Contender Series. Like the Contender Series every season gets a couple of undefeated fighters that just were built up in small regional promotions on low-level opposition. And Marnik Man was one of the worst. Just in terms of physicality and skill, she just did not look like a UFC level fighter, and she got highlight reeled for it. But at any rate, I think that's part of probably what's informing the line here. But even though I'm picking Bruna Brasil to win this one, I'm not picking her to effortlessly head kick Denise Gomes as she just comes in with her hands down, just like running at Brazil's foot. I think this is probably going to be a pretty back and forth fight, and I think it'll probably have a surprising amount of groundwork. But yeah, just Brazil, she's going to be a little bit bigger. I think she's faster and more athletic. I think if she wants to take the fight to the ground, if Loma can do the head and arm throw like 4 times on Denise Gomes in a fight, I think Bruna Brasil can probably do it once or twice. And from there, I think, if she wants to get some work done on the ground against her, she'll probably be able to. Give me Brazil here in a pretty fun decision. And unfortunately, that'll start Denise Gomes off with 2 losses in the UFC. Hopefully she gets at least another chance or 2 to make her mark. We head now to the lightweight division for a matchup between Lando Vannata and Daniel Zellhuber. Vannata, the 31-year-old New Jersey native, is 12-6-2 overall. He is 4-6-2 since joining the UFC as a short notice replacement opponent for Tony Ferguson way back when. 4-6-2 overall. He's 2-5-2 at lightweight. He, has fought at featherweight 3 times in the UFC. Here he is back to lightweight after back-to-back fights at 145. He will be taking on Zellhuber. The 23-year-old Mexican is 12-1 overall. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He came to the UFC as an undefeated prospect all the way up through a win on the Contender Series back in September of 2021. He made a delayed debut in the UFC in September of 2022 and dropped a unanimous decision to Trey Ogden, who was busy just last weekend at UFC 287. Here, another 7 months later, he will have his second chance at his first Octagon win. Sorry, I have to stop saying Octagon because the Contender Series happens in an Octagon, and DC always says that kind of stuff as a nervous habit, and I keep correcting him when he's on my TV. I have to do better. Zellhuber will have his second chance at his first actual UFC win, and he is ever so slightly favored to do so. This one is almost a pick 'em, but Zellhuber right now is -115, Vannata -105. Keith, I used to say about Paulo Thiago that I never saw a fighter get more juice out of one UFC win than Paulo Thiago did out of like uppercutting Josh Koscheck and face planting him.
It was
like
probably an early stoppage too.
It was, a bit of an early stoppage, though. You hate to see it happen to a nicer guy than Josh Koscheck. But
I love my wrestlers, but I don't know about Josh Koscheck.
Yeah. Lando Vannata at this point, has anyone gotten more mileage out of like 2 minutes of having Tony Ferguson in trouble?
Matt Serra, maybe.
Yeah, but at least Matt Serra actually beat somebody. Lando Vannata at lightweight in the UFC is 2-5-2.
Yeah, he didn't even win.
I think Lando Vannata might not have a win over anybody that's. Yeah, he doesn't have a win over any lightweight currently on UFC roster. It's something, and I mean, it's partly that he debuted with a bang. You come in on short notice, you almost snap what would end up being a like nearly record winning streak for Ferguson. And part of it is that he's always exciting. But yeah, I mean, he's hanging on by a thread here. He's been alternating wins and losses, and like draws for like the last 5 years. And he's taking on someone in Zellhuber that, yeah, he came to the UFC undefeated, but against super low level competition, and ran into the wall that is Trey Ogden.
That's right.
Normally, you don't get matchups like this in the UFC lightweight division. It's just too deep a division. It's too unforgiving. I mean, break down this fight for me. Zellhuber, he is super young. Is there any upside there?
Yeah, I mean, oh God, this fight sucks. Yeah, Vannata. So what was the betting odds?
Zellhuber is -115, Vannata -105, so it's close to a pick 'em.
Wow, I thought Vannata was going to be a favorite. I said something off the air, which you'll figure out why I said that later. I mean, Vannata's a good athlete. Like, he moves well. He's pretty elusive. He's got some good snap on his shots. Keeps everything tight, not a lot of tells. Cuts angles really well. He does keep his hands low, which I don't like. Kicks are a big part of his game. A lot of spinning attacks. He has a D1 wrestling background, so he can occasionally get a sneak in a takedown, but he hardly ever uses his wrestling. Surprisingly, how easily he's been taken on in the past, and he's been rocked a lot of times. And then he was subbed in his last fight. Now, Zellhuber, you mentioned only 23, which I like. He's got some raw tools that is good. I mean, one is just his size. He's long, lengthy. He's a bit of a distance striker. Uses feints well to draw out attacks. Fast hands. Nice snap on his shots. I like that he targets the body. He doesn't like being pressured, which isn't a good thing. He avoids shots with like deflecting shots with shoulder rolls, which I've said in the past I don't like. It just doesn't look like optically. It doesn't look good to the judges. He can brawl a little bit, which he shouldn't based on his size. He probably should want to stay on the outside. He also tends to get hurt even in fights where he's winning easily. Like, he was hurt in Contender. I see him hurt a couple of times on the regional scene against lower level guys. Kicks are definitely the best part of his game. Like, a lot of kicks, calf kicks. He's got a great head kick. He likes the question mark kick too. He will throw kicks without a setup, so he's going to get blasted for that. He's got a strong Muay Thai clinch. He gets in the clinch and he batters to the body. He hit a beautiful judo throw on the Contender Series. Some strong ground and pound. He has 2 submission wins. It's hard to trust a guy who just lost to Trey Ogden, who's probably walking out the UFC door now. But Vannata has looked really poor. I was going to say lately, but I guess he really looked poor in almost every UFC fight. So I think this is another tough one because I'm not high on either guy. But I said I was going to surprise you in a pick just because I thought Vannata was going to be the favorite. And I was going to say that I was just going to go with youth. I'm going to go with the guy that at his age can probably make more improvements. Now, I know Vannata's only 31, which seems like he should be older than that, but
it doesn't help that he's been balding since he's been like 2024.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll go with Zellhuber. He's got the size. I think we have another close decision. I'll say Zellhuber wins by split decision.
Yeah, this is a coin flip fight for me as well. Vannata, he came to the UFC as a wild fighter. I remember kind of doing some last minute, not even tape study. It's not like I was studying for anything in 2015 or whenever it was, but just, okay, who the hell is this guy that all of a sudden is fighting Tony Ferguson on 3 days notice? And, I saw some of his regional fights. I was like, oh, this dude is wild, because he was really all spinning stuff all the time in his early fights, and used his wrestling more often, but used it in an almost Tony Ferguson-like way just to create chaos. He's really tooled a lot of that back. He's become a more conservative fighter. So now he's not wild. He's just inconsistent. At 31,
was that inconsistent? Sometimes he's bad and sometimes he's really bad. Like, what?
I feel bad saying that because in most of his fights, he's in the fight. Like, he gave Bobby Green and Mark Chikadze good fights. Those are good fighters. He beat Yancy Medeiros. Yancy Medeiros was a decent fighter. Like, he got torched by Charles Jourdain, but part of that is just that Jourdain is a very quick strike guy. Jourdain doesn't take like 3-round like nip and tuck decisions over people. If he beats you, he's just going to scorch you with something in 2 minutes. Like, he's got draws with people like Green and Matt Frivola. Again, like at least solid mid-level UFC lightweights. But at this point, you know, he's below 500 in the UFC. He's very below 500 at lightweight. And I don't see him turning a corner. He's not a prospect anymore. He's a 31-year-old man who's, you know, winning a race with his hair, you know, for sure. And Zellhuber, even if he'll
get some plugs, he'll get some plugs. Some prizes come out with some hair plugs.
50 G's, Dana.
Yeah, like, I mean, if he shows up and like he's got a new head of hair or something,
new rug.
Yeah, I'm switching my pick.
Oh yeah, like full head of hair Vannata will be like the mythical, like Chuck with that look in his eye, motivated BJ Penn. Yeah,
it's like a Samson, like just
like Sam.
Yeah,
like mullet Vitor in 2013. Yeah, I got. Here, I don't believe in Zellhuber yet. As you pointed out, most of his upside at this point just comes from his raw physical tools. He is a big dude for the division. He's 6'1", and he's not a tall, skinny 6'1". He just looks like, I mean, kind of like Ignacio Balmondes that we just saw fight last weekend. He's just a big guy for the weight class and uses it well. He's a bully in the clinch, like, you know, like tall, you know, Muay Thai clinch fighters often are, where they just use that height, you know, because it makes it easy for him to hit with knees to the body. They just have the physics advantage of being able to like bend over and apply leverage on the other person. Zellhuber, losing to Trey Ogden is not a good look. Like future top 15 fighters don't lose to Trey Ogden.
Or future top 50 fighters.
But again, he's just 23, and I'm probably going to say this on every one of our shows until people get tired of me saying it. In a division where Charles Oliveira is a recent former champ and still a top 5 guy, I will never ever say never, because you can't be more fragile and inconsistent and more of a basket case than Charles Oliveira was when he was 23.
Yeah. But in fairness, like good Charles Oliveira was like really good. Like, yeah. When you saw, you know, you saw that like, oh wow.
Oh yeah, he was the ultimate glass cannon. His best wins, even back in his bad days, were incredible. Just his bad losses were horrifyingly bad, and he missed weight ridiculously often. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day. Zellhuber here, he already seems to know what he's good at. And I'm not sure Lando Vannata still does. So give me Zellhuber by decision as well. I don't know if we'll learn a whole lot about him, but it'll get him into the win column, and it'll keep him around the UFC. It'll be an open question whether we can say the same about Vannata afterwards. I mean, if he loses here, you can pencil him in for my cut list on the recap. But yeah, give me Zellhuber in probably kind of a weird and wild fight. We head back to the strawweight division for a matchup between Gillian Robertson and Piera Rodriguez. Robertson, the 27-year-old Canadian by way of Florida, is 11-7 overall. She's 8-6 since joining the UFC out of season 26 of The Ultimate Fighter. This will be her strawweight debut. That entire 8-6 record has been compiled at flyweight. She has decided, for whatever reasons, to make the drop to 115 pounds to see if that, gets her over the hump. Standing in her way will be Rodriguez. The 30-year-old Venezuelan is a perfect 9-0 in her mixed martial arts career. She is 2-0 since joining the UFC out of the 5th season of Dana White's Contender Series. Since winning on the Contender Series back in October of 2021, she fought twice last year. She fought at UFC 273 in April, where she took a unanimous decision over Kay Hansen, then came back in October at UFC Fight Night, Grasso versus Araujo, and won a unanimous decision over Sam Hughes. Odds here, yet another fight on this card that is practically a pick'em and may well be a pick'em by Fight Night. Robertson is just the slightest of favorites, minus 115. Rodriguez, minus 105. Keith, you and I have been doing these previews for long enough that we have previewed a lot of Gillian Robertson fights, and the my scouting report on Gillian Robertson has not changed. She is a slick, opportunistic grappler who tends to lack a little bit in physical strength and is a really, really poor striker.
Yeah.
Dropping to 115 pounds might help one of those things. It is not likely to help the other. Also of note is that she was a longtime American top team member. She's moved her training to the Goat Shed, which is also located in Miami. And I mean, obviously they're an MMA gym. You know, all these gyms are MMA gyms, but they come from a Muay Thai focus. So that may be seen as an effort on her part to shore up the other obvious hole in her game. Tell me if you think this is a better fit for her, this division, and tell me if you think she's the one to hand Rodriguez her first career loss.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like she wasn't losing because she was like weaker, you know.
But I mean, that's a good point. I mean, she beat people like Priscilla Cachoeira and Molly McCann that are physically.
Yeah. Like you you have her and Priscilla Cachoeira at a bench press competition. Like it's not even close. I guess if you're a top side grappler, I guess, you know, being at least equal in strength to somebody. So, okay. So yeah, maybe I'm changing my mind on that. So yeah, I think maybe going down, we don't know. It's always, I hate to do like, we'll see, you know, because you don't, she should be bigger. But
well, if we say we'll see, then like all of a sudden this is a 10-minute preview show. Like who wins? We'll see.
We'll see who wins. Next. Just go scroll to the picks at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, I swear probably 90% of our listeners, that's what they want anyways. I feel like I just feel done like breaking down Gillian Robertson. Like, who do you think we've broken down the most? I mean, Robertson, she's got to be in that like a top 10 for people we've done.
She has to be. I mean,
Kevin Holland,
because he's fought a ton, and some of his fights we've had to break down twice because Hamzat Chimaev fucked up like a whole card.
Yeah. I feel like Jared Mershad is one of those guys we've done a lot.
Yeah. That's
Chase Sherman. I don't know that
Chase Sherman has the highest ratio of times we've talked about him to times he's actually fought at this point.
Yeah. I just feel like we've done it so many times, and she never improves. I mean, she's a minus athlete with extremely limited stand-up skills. She's a low output boxer who throws a lot of arm strikes. Her kicks are all to just close her distance. She's very, very hittable. She lacks head movement. She almost like throws strikes and like turns her head away to like try to avoid strikes and just kind of grab her opponent with her head away.
Is it a Canadian woman with red hair thing? Is she just Randa Marcos 2.0?
Oh, I think yeah. Okay. I was gonna say yeah. I think Randa Marcos looked like freaking Floyd Mayweather on the feet compared to Gillian Robertson. I mean, not that Randa Marcos was anything spectacular, you know, on the feet, but so she can wrestle. You know, she's got some good entries. She's good at, you know, she gets a leg, turn in the corner, but she will just dive right into her opponent without any setup. Like she can get very desperate to get the fight to the ground, try to catch a kick and get it down, pull guard, or you know, she's tried flying submission, but she tried a flying armbar against Talia Santos. She's a strong grappler, but it really needs to be from the top position. When she's on top, she's good. She controls well. She advances position. She works. The best part of her game is the way she works for a submission. She doesn't rush things. She slowly works, controls the position. She got some slick back takes. She's got 6 wins by submission. But one part of her game is she's weaker off her back. Like she plays BJJ, struggles to get back up. But she doesn't want to strike at all. She'd rather lose being on bottom than trying to work back to her feet. Now, I think this last time that Rodriguez, and you mentioned another person reminded you of Jessica Andrade. I think Rodriguez reminds me of Jessica Andrade. She's explosive. She gets in the pocket and she unloads big shots. Quick hands, throws a lot of like short, tight hooks. Good power. Though she does tend to try to look for the perfect blow instead of just letting the KO come to her. So she loads up a little bit. She prefers to be the one marching forward and forcing her opponent on the back foot. She can wrestle. She got some good entries. I love her reactionary like single leg. She has a good way of like using her opponent's pressure. If her opponent pressures her, she uses that pressure and she just lowers her level, gets on a single, and finish it. Though I do think she still needs to set up some of her entries a little better. And she's a weaker defensive wrestler, which is a serious issue against someone like Robertson. If Robertson can get on top, you could be in trouble. But if Rodriguez is on top, she's got some good control. She doesn't have a submission on her record, and she did slow down against Sam Hughes, which is not a good thing. But in fairness, a victory over Sam Hughes has continued to age well. So I'm gonna go with Rodriguez. I'm surprised she's the underdog. I'm gonna go Rodriguez, but this is a very winnable fight for Robertson. I just think Rodriguez is going to make Robertson pay when she's coming in. I think she's going to land some hard shots as she's coming in. I think the grappling exchanges, she might find herself on top. And if she finds herself on top, I think she can land some hard ground and pound. I'm going to say Rodriguez wins in a decision, which the fight, she looks stronger and stronger as the fight moves on, because I think Robertson will have a harder time to get in the fight to the ground. And that's when Rodriguez will land a better shot. So give me Rodriguez by decision.
Yeah. I definitely should have gone first there. You make a good point about Robertson's like her physical limitations and how they affect her game, because one of my big kind of bullet points about her is minus athlete, lacking in physical strength. But as you point out, she's beaten plenty of women who are bigger and stronger than her. I mean, Priscilla Cachoeira is bigger and stronger. Maria Agapova, winning over Veronica Macedo, now Hardy, has all of a sudden aged really well. Molly McCann's definitely bigger than she is. I think the reason that is like one of my top notes about her, it goes back to the Macy Barber fight, because against Barber, she clearly wanted none of what she was getting on the feet. She was desperate to get it to the ground. So she pulled guard in the first round, and Barber just kind of stood back up. Robertson like clung to a body lock and tried to pull her down, and Barber just shucked her off. And when they ended up on the ground, it was Barber on top, and Barber just pounded her. And at that point, I was like, okay, it's going to be a problem every time Robertson runs into people who can physically bully her around and won't let her get the fight to the ground on her own terms. And I think that's probably stuck with me ever since, even though that's now over 3 years ago. But here, I can see Rodriguez giving her some of that same problem, because Rodriguez, I mean, she won't be as big as a lot of the flyweight opponents that Robertson fought, but she's got that same just kind of like bully energy to her, where I can see her not just fighting off Robertson's takedown attempts, but fighting them off like Barber did. Just like, okay, well, if you want to go to the ground, it's going to be with me shoving you down and immediately starting to elbow you in the face. If Robertson can get like actual takedowns the way she wants on Rodriguez, all bets are off, because all of a sudden she's going to be the bigger woman. Like maybe Robertson as the bigger woman operating out of top position is what she was meant to do all this time, and she'll go on to, to really turn a corner at strawweight. But Rodriguez, I don't think is the opponent to find out against, because I have Rodriguez here as well. It'll be interesting to see how Robertson's gas tank stands up to what's presumably going to be a more difficult weight cut. And I'm not going to pick Rodriguez to get the finish here, because Robertson, for whatever else you may say about her, is extremely tough and extremely game, and has been on the wrong side of some beatings from some pretty mean women at 125, people like Tyler Santos, and survived to hear the final horn. So I'm not going to pick Rodriguez to get the finish here, but yeah, give me Rodriguez to win this one in. I have the feeling it might look a little one-sided. Like I think Robertson's going to find out pretty quickly she can't get the fight to the ground the way she wants to, and she's going to be stuck either, as you pointed out, conceding bottom position because she doesn't really want to get back up and keep getting punched on the feet, or returning to the feet and and getting punched. So give me Rodriguez by decision as well, in what, at least as of right now, is a very mild upset. Next up at UFC on ESPN 44, do not adjust your television, do not adjust your calendar. It is the year 2023, and Zak Cummings and Ed Herman are about to square off at light heavyweight of all things. Cummings, the 38-year-old Greater Kansas City native, is 24-7 overall. He is 9-4 since joining the UFC as a veteran of the 17th season of The Ultimate Fighter. That 9-4 mark reflects a 6-3 run at welterweight and then 3-1 at middleweight. This will be his first fight at light heavyweight. He has not fought at all since August of 2020. So just a little over just a little over 2.5 years since his last fight. That fight was
way better. Sorry to interrupt you. That's a way better record than I thought he'd have in the UFC.
No, Zak Cummings. For those who don't know, one of the article series that I wrote for Sherdog was called The Ultimate Fighter Redraft, where I just took all the seasons of The Ultimate Fighter from the first on up, and you remember how the coaches would draft the fighters. I would redraft them in order of how they actually did, and Cummings came in third on that season after like Kelvin Gastelum and Uriah Hall, and he was close with Uriah Hall neck and neck.
Yeah. But I would rather redraft the entire series than break down this fight.
Unfortunately,
Michael Bisping, first pick. Second pick, we'll go to season 19 and go with this guy. Yeah.
I get it. But I felt the same as you did, where I'm like, wow, his record in the UFC is a lot better than I expected. And the reason is just the eyeball test. He just looks like a goofy Midwest journeyman, where in fact, he's a pretty damn skilled fighter. His last fight was back in August of 2020. It was a unanimous decision win over Alessio Di Chirico at UFC Fight Night Smith versus Rakic. He has been absent since then. He's been mostly busy at his day job because he's the other owner of Glory MMA and Fitness. Like Zak Cummings and James Krause were the co-owners of Glory MMA and Fitness, and Krause obviously had been well on his way to transitioning to being a full-time coach / better. And Cummings, had sort of quietly moved into retirement and just coaching and running the gym. Glory MMA and Fitness is no longer a going concern, but Zak Cummings is, and apparently he wants a paycheck. So the UFC, as if to show no hard feelings, booked him for a fight, and they booked him a winnable one as he takes on Herman. The 42-year-old Oregonian is 26-15 with 1 no contest overall. He's 13-11 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC out of season 3 of The Ultimate Fighter. That would be the Michael Bisping season. Yeah, season 3 of The Ultimate Fighter. What a hell of a run. And he himself has not fought in a while. His last fight was August of 2021. So in his case, it's been almost 2 years. And that was a unanimous decision loss to Alonzo Menefield. Prior to that, unbelievably, Ed Herman had been on a 3-fight win streak. He won 3 straight over Patrick Cummins, Kadis Ibragimov, and Slow Mike Rodriguez. Obviously, none of those the highest level win. Nonetheless, 3 straight before running into Menefield. But it is Cummings versus Herman, a fight straight out of 2019, if not 2016, and we're getting it in 2023. I don't know how they arrived at this, and if you are the betting type, I would avoid any fight involving Zak Cummings like the plague, but he is a minus 250 favorite, Herman plus 210 on the comeback. I think part of the reason they brought Zak Cummings back is because Clay Guida is fighting tonight, and with Jacare retired, Clay Guida was going to be the last guy on roster that fought in Strikeforce. And so they're like, no, we're going to fuck up Clay Guida's day. We're going to bring back Zak Cummings for one more fight. So that, because Cummings and Guida are the last 2 people in the UFC now that Derek Brunson and Jacare have retired, whoever fought in Strikeforce.
Didn't Ed Herman fight once in Strikeforce?
Did Ed Herman fight in Strikeforce?
Like he had
he fought Jacare in Strikeforce. How could I forget that?
Yeah, he had that one weird fight. Like he broke his UFC run. It was like he had 20 fights in the UFC. He had 1 fight in Strikeforce and went back to the UFC.
That's right. So this is This is for the lineal Strike Force middleweight title. I am kidding. It is not like
we gotta bring Scott Coker. Scott Coker is gonna be in attendance. Just the good old day.
Wow, Keith, quick on the pickup there. Yes, Ed Herman fought in Strike Force. He went on loan over there, got Kimura'd by Jacare in like 3 minutes, and then came back to the UFC. Okay, I've given as long of an intro to this fight as I can. Keith, explain to me how somebody who has not fought in almost 3 years is a minus 250 favorite over anybody, considering he's fighting in a new weight class for the first time.
Yeah, this guy's a former welterweight who's now fighting at light heavyweight. Any truth that Zak Cummings is Sam Hughes' boyfriend and was making a bet on her? Any truth to that? Yeah, I love this. Like Ed Herman is coach. He's coaching too. So we have like the two coaches going against. This feels like a fight breaks out at the football game, and then the two coaches fight each other. Two high school coaches fight each other. Like that. That's what this feels like.
And Ed Herman looks like a high school.
Oh, absolutely,
totally. Either that or like a really grizzled like police detective who's taken like one last case before he retires. He's got a little bit of that energy to him as well.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Dude, I think he's older than you. Like that's why.
There's not many of them left, but he is. Ed Herman.
Man, well, you mentioned that Herman is a coach. Like in MMA, we don't really do coaching trees like they do for football. Where like, this guy was a great coach and then these are the people but basically every single one of the Team Quest OGs like opened his own gym. When you think about it, like Couture, Hendo, Lindland. Well, I mean, Lindland kind of stayed at Team Quest, like now Herman, like all those guys.
Matt Lilland's the U.S. Greco wrestling coach. Yeah. Good. That's very true. Yeah, this fight, Jesus. Ed Herman's 42. He might as well be like 92 because, I mean, he's been in the game forever.
He's been in the game forever. Lucky for him, he was a minus athlete even in his prime.
Yeah, that's true. Like nothing's changed from 22-year-old Ed Herman and 42-year-old.
Yeah.
I question Ed Herman's like motivation. Like he'll never be a champion. He'll never be a top 15 guy. He coaches a bunch of guys. Like how much does he focus on himself? How much is this other than just a paycheck to him? Like what's that motivation to train hard? Like you get paid either way.
And well, just real quick, it's the question that I thought of and didn't ask about Aaron Phillips, and Ed Herman is 10 years older.
Yeah. And then you're going in the other guy's hometown, or somewhat hometown, I guess. Yeah. So Herman, he's a stalking fighter you said he's a minus athlete. He's very flat-footed. He does stay right in front of his opponent, so he isn't much of a moving target. He has a high guard defense, lacks head movement. His hands are slow. He does have a long jab. He loves his check left hook. He throws this winging overhand right. He has underrated power. He has thumping leg kicks. He doesn't check leg kicks. I mean, Alonzo Menefield murdered his calf, if you remember that. In his last fight. He does have a good chin, though. Like Ed Herman can take a beating. He can wrestle a little bit. Usually it's from the clinch, but he doesn't wrestle much. Basically, at 42, it's hard to wrestle. I doubt he has the cardio to wrestle much. Zak Cummings, I mean, it's really hard to understand where you get. He's a former 175-pound fighter who's now fighting at 205. He's a southpaw that does switch stances a lot. Good chin. He tends to, walk through his opponent's shots and keep coming, constantly stalking his foe. Good volume, not much power. He kind of just touches. He does set up power shots with feints, but again, I don't think he has a lot of power. He likes his straight left. He throws a lot of kicks, but there's nothing special there. He just kind of tosses them out there. He drops his hands, so he relies on head movement. Alessio DiCerico had a lot of success with kicks against Cummings, and he just doesn't wrestle anymore. Like I was looking at, he hasn't got a takedown in 7 years. So, and he needs to improve his own takedown defense. All right, so Ed Herman's a super cool guy. I've met him a bunch of times. If you're in the regional scene, you're going to meet these guys. Like But that said, like, why are these guys fighting? Like, why are they still fighting the UFC? This is what I say happens. Ed Herman closes the distance, gets into the clinch. They stop fighting. He accidentally, as a dirty boxing, maybe like gouges Zak Cummings in the eye. His eye swells up. He can't continue. The fight ends. It's a no contest. The crowd gets really mad that Ed Herman eye gouged their own guy, so they start throwing like bottles in the cage. While that happens, one of them hits Ed Herman. He goes full Ron Artest because redheads get really angry. Jumps
short
out
fuse.
Of the crowd. Yeah, short. That is his nickname. He jumps out of the crowd. When he jumps out of the crowd, he starts throwing haymakers at people. Accidentally hits a woman, but because they're in Kansas City, it's Kansas City Chiefs quarterback's Patrick Mahomes' wife. Ed Herman knocks out Patrick Mahomes' wife. That's what happens. That's my prediction.
That's just remember, when it goes down like that, you heard it here first. And I mean, as we know from Dana White, you don't come back from hitting a woman. So this will be Ed Herman's last fight in the UFC. Next up at UFC Kansas City is the people's main event as Brandon Royval takes on Matheus Nicolau in a men's flyweight matchup. Royval, the 30-year-old Factory X product, is 14-6 overall. He's 4-2 in the UFC. He's on a 2-fight win streak. Those both coming last year in the form of a split decision win over Rogerio Bontorin back in January, and then at UFC 274 in May, a first-round submission of Matt Schnell. Here, almost exactly 11 months later, he returns to face Nicolau. The 30-year-old Brazilian is 19-2-1 overall. He's 7-1 across 2 separate stints in the UFC. He went 3-1 around 2016 to 2018. He left the UFC as part of the great flyweight exodus that took place when Demetrius Johnson went to one championship and it looked as though the division might shut down entirely. However, he returned in 2021 and has rattled off 4 straight wins in that time. All of them quality. A split decision win over Manel Kopp back in March of 2021, a unanimous decision win over Tim Elliott in October of that year, a unanimous decision win over David Dvorak last March, and a second-round KO of Schnell last December at UFC on ESPN Thompson versus Holland. Nicolau will look to make it 5 straight and perhaps mint himself a title challenger sooner rather than later. He is moderately favored to do so. Nicolau is minus 165, Royval around plus 140 as the underdog. Keith, Matheus Nicolau saw his girlfriend, fiance, Luana Pinheiro, win over Michelle Waterson Gomez last Saturday. It was a very close, if not controversial affair, to say the least. Does he get it done on Saturday? And if so, is it that close or is it a more clear-cut thing?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good fight. This is besides the main event, the best fight on the card.
Dude, how good is flyweight? Like,
it's fantastic.
Nicolau has 4 straight wins over at least top 15 quality guys. Like the worst win in that is Schnell, and he's like a borderline top 15 guy. Royval,
stud.
Yeah, like great. And the greatest thing about men's flyweight is not only are there like incredible fighters from the 1 through about the 20, but most of them are exciting. They're aggressive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not the best division because of it's just not deep, just the pure numbers. They don't have as many as bantamweight, but I mean, if there's a fight on the card, like flyweight's usually the one like, this is gonna be a great fight. It's just how, especially when it's ranked flyweights. And then it's even more safe to say it's gonna be a great fight when you throw in Brandon Royval. Oh, I mean, Brandon Royval is the definition of athleticism and like creativity. Like creativity is just his best tool. Like he's always coming up with crazy things. He's a southpaw. He's a massive guy for the division. High volume, just completely abandons defense. Drops his hands, keeps his chin high in the air. I go back to like the Kara France. Kara France made him pay for that. He doesn't check leg kicks, but all those flaws defensively, he has tons of offensive weapons. I mean, long jab, stiff jab, long strikes, like spinning attacks, big, huge kicking game, teep kicks, kicks to, I mean, really all parts of the body. I love that he follows his kicks into the pocket. Like his kicks, a lot of people throw hands and then throw kicks. He likes to throw kicks into his hands. Throw a kick and then he comes with a punching combination. I love his step in knees. I like his work in the clinch where he uses his size really well. He's a weak defensive wrestler and he makes it worse because he jumps guillotine, but he's got a really good guillotine. I mean, he's a really dangerous grappler. One of these guys, he uses his long limbs to toss up submission attempts, good flexibility. He kind of reminds me of like a weaker version of Charles Oliveira. And I didn't mean that as a knock towards Brandon Viola. I just mean like he's not as polished as Charles Oliveira, but his style of like it's just scrambling and tossing up attacks, really good at catching submissions and scrambles. He's good at just keeping his hips constantly moving, like a very Ben Askren funk style wrestler. He's, he will stay on his back going for submissions, and that hurt him against Brandon Moreno. But overall, he's just going to be fun for 15 minutes. Now, but Matheus Nicolau is also a really good athlete. He moves well, definitely different, like a lot more polished, not as creative as Brandon Royval, not like chaos that Brandon Royval is, but he moves well. He's got some good footwork, good head movement, good at setting up his opponent's shots by slipping and landing some of his own shots. He's really good at making his opponents chase him and then suddenly stop on a dime and have them walk into power counters. He tends to lull them asleep and then dart in and land some big shots. Fast hands, explosive, stays really tight. His best strike is his straight left hand. Throws some hard hooks. Some of the best power in the division. Like we talk about guys that flyweight with power, we don't talk about Nicolau. Like Nicolau can crack. Throw some hard leg kicks. He's a solid wrestler, great grappler, mean ground and pound. He has 5 submission wins on his record. This is an amazing fight. It's a really tough one because Royval has just his raw tools, but Nicolau is the more technically sound fighter. I think Nicolau lands the hardest strikes on the feet due to Royval doing all this crazy stuff. I think we get some killer scrambles on the ground, but I think Nicolau is going to be the one getting the slight edge because I think he's going to be the one on top in those scrambles. Maybe fighting off some submission-esque, Royval rolling for an ankle or stuff like this, and Nicolau just keeping the top position. I think we have a really fun, close fight, but I'm gonna go with Nicolau. I'm gonna say he wins by split decision.
Yeah, anytime you get a ranked flyweight fight on a card, you can pencil it in at least as a front runner for fight of the night. This one is no exception. Just it's incredible how many of the top fighters in the men's flyweight division are as aggressive as they are. The composed guys, quote unquote, at men's flyweight are like Davison Figueiredo, Tim Elliott, Kai Kara France, and even they are pretty aggressive.
I don't know about Tim Elliott being composed, but the other two, yeah, I agree. And Tim Elliott can be pretty crazy. And
on the flip side, Brandon Moreno is about as reckless a champ as the UFC has right now.
Yeah. And Brandon Royval fights like Brandon Royval fights like a toddler who's taking off a sweater and can't get it off his head, and they start spinning and don't know what they're doing. They're banging into things and stuff. And they're trying to get this sweater off.
I love that was your comparison because I was about to say a dog that's stuck in a blanket and it's
Yeah, fair enough.
Even among the legion of savages that populate the flyweight top 15, Royval might be the wildest one, with the possible exception of Alexandre Pantoja. I think those guys are 1 and 2, and Royval might be number 1. But here I'm with you in leaning towards Nicolau, just for being more composed, more fundamentally sound. I think he's likely to be able to punish Pantoja on the feet, and I think he's likely to survive the chaos that Royval will bring on the ground. There's going to be chaos. There's no possible way that Royval isn't able to force some of the scrambles that he thrives in. But I think Nicolau is a fundamentally positionally sound enough grappler that he's not going to get carried away. He's not going to end up getting into a scramble where he just gives up his back easily, or, you know, just ends up rolling right into an armbar or something. And because of that, I think Nicolau's probably going to win rounds here. You mentioned that Nicolau is underrated power, and I think it's because you look down his record, he doesn't have any knockouts in his recent run in the UFC, and he might only have like one knockout or TKO in the UFC period, but he's hurt just about everybody he's fought. He's clipped them with that kind of power where they blink and shake their head and adjust their game plan going forward. And I expect that he's going to have at least one or two moments like that against Royval as well. So give me Nicolau to win a decision here, probably win all 3 rounds, but in a fight that probably deserves fight of the night, even if it doesn't win it. But yeah, I'll take Nicolau by decision as well. Next up at UFC Kansas City, and at least as the card is currently constituted, the top prelim is a featherweight matchup between Bill Algeo and TJ Brown. Algeo, the 33-year-old Pennsylvania native, is 16-7 overall. He is 3-3 since joining the UFC as a veteran of the 3rd season of Dana White's Contender Series. He actually wasn't signed off of that appearance because he lost. He lost a unanimous decision to Brendan Loughnane. Luckily, Algeo is still alive because Dana White was looking for killers that night, and Loughnane did not kill him. But he went back, won one more fight in CFFC, and then was signed to the UFC. Since then, he's gone 3-3. Most recently lost. He appeared at UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Song last September, dropped a close split decision to Andre Fili. That put the brakes on a 2-fight win streak over Joanderson Brito and Herbert Burns. Algeo will be looking to get back into the win column here. Looking to stop him in that endeavor will be Brown. The 32-year-old Arkansas native, sometimes by way of Kansas City, is 17-9 overall. He also is 3-3 in the UFC. He also came to the UFC through the 3rd season of Dana White's Contender Series. In his appearance, he choked out Dylan Lockard. That was good enough to get signed right away. Since then, he's been 500, but he is coming off a win. He appeared in December at UFC 282, where he choked out Eric Silva in the 3rd round. Odds here, fairly close, as is the case for most of the fights on this card, but Algeo is the favorite. He's minus 165, Brown plus 140. Keith, TJ Brown, and kind of like Zak Cummings, they did everything they could to bring as much local or local associated talent as they could to this card. Brown, one of those guys that he was definitely a Glory MMA and fitness guy, but always kept 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door, always conducted part of his training at Westside MMA in Little Rock. I think he may even teach there as well, definitely has a relationship with that gym. So he wasn't as hard hit as some others by the collapse of Glory late last year. Are you still at the point where you worry about how an association with Glory affects these fighters' preparation for a fight, or are we far enough removed from it that they should have something figured out by now?
Yeah, I think that should be figured out. I mean, we have guys leaving gyms all the time. So it's not like it was something unusual to leave gyms. It's hard. It's really hard to keep track of who's at what gym sometimes.
Yeah.
You obviously have your core guys that are always at the same gym, but I mean, a couple of guys here and there, at every card, there's 14 fights on this card to 28 fighters on the card. 3 guys in this card will be at a different team. 3-4 guys will have a different team that did the card before that.
Sure.
That's how it is. So yeah, I'm not concerned about that.
All right. And I mean, break down this fight for us. Who wins it?
This is a fun fight. I think both guys are pretty fun. TJ Brown's your wrestle boxer. He's got some quick hands, works behind a power jab, throws a lot of power combinations, short hooks and crosses. He does have power in his hands. He throws a lot of kicks. He's got a good high kick. A bunch of defensive issues. One, he keeps his chin high in the air. He's been hurt a lot. He's been rocked in many fights. It's been a while ago, but I go back to the Danny Chavez fight. Danny Chavez beat the brakes off him in that fight. TJ Brown, he's a good wrestler, strong entries, good chaining attempts together, good top game, good ground and pound. He has a submission threat. He loves that like classic wrestler head and arm choke. The one negative about his grappling is he constantly chasing submissions, which aren't there, and he'll lose position trying to get a submission, which I don't like. Now, Algeo, much different fighter than Brown. He's a long and lengthy striker. He's like a controlled pressure striker. I've said this in the past. He fights a lot like Stephen Thompson, where he keeps his hands low and counters from weird angles. He's got some high output. He attacks with combinations, adds kicks to his combos, which I like. He's got a very strong kicking game. He loves the close the distance and throw like a flying knee to close that distance. When he closes the distance, he likes to get in the plum clinch, use his size in there. Easy for him to land knees to the head and stuff because of his height. He will wrestle a little bit. He'll go for like a body lock inside. He does go for that like head and arm throw, which I don't like. He has a BJJ black belt. He tosses up submissions from the bottom. If he doesn't get a submission, he's pretty good at using space to get back up to his feet. But he's a really weak defensive wrestler. He's been taken down a bunch of times, and that's because another theme of this, he doesn't go for, like he doesn't sprawl. Like he'll jump to guillotine. He'll look to like a rolling Kimura, like Car Parisian style, like rolling Kimura. To his credit, though, he's been on the ground with some really good grapplers and not submitted. I mean, I think about like Herbert Burns Herbert Burns eventually gassed out, but like Herbert Burns is a very good grappler. He was tossing up submission attempts and couldn't get Bill Algeo. We talk about this fight as, you know, TJ Brown might be coaching or something outside. Like Algeo has his own team too. He runs his own team, so something to watch there. If Brown can turn this into a wrestling match, he should win. I just don't trust him. I don't think he handles the volume of Algeo. I think he tries to land some power shots, and Algeo he counters with long range shots. Give me Algeo to win by decision.
Yeah, I wish there was more disagreement on this preview. I'm sure that would like spice things up for the listeners, but the last thing you said basically encapsulates this entire fight. If Brown were willing to lean on his wrestling, I'd be more comfortable picking him to win this fight, but I'm not sure I trust him to. I can see him spending too much time on the feet, maybe trying to get like a highlight reel knockout in front of the hometown fans. I don't know, but Algeo's, I mean, he's not a plus athlete by the standards of the featherweight division, but the defensive wrestling is what's really kind of set his cap. I mean, it's what lost him the fight against Andre Fili. That was a 1-round-to-1 fight going into the third round. Yeah, Algeo had his best UFC win within his grasp, but Fili got an effortless takedown and spent most of the rest of the round on top, and that was the difference in that fight.
To Fili's credit, Fili's a very underrated wrestler.
No, Fili's a good offensive wrestler. I agree, but
so is Brown.
Yeah, so is Brown, but Fili at this point with 20 UFC fights or whatever is willing to lean on that and not just be the, you know, wild like scrapper. Yeah. I'm not sure I trust Brown to do that either. So I'm leaning towards Algeo to win 2 rounds out of 3 by outlanding Brown on the feet. And if there's one round where Brown shoots for a takedown, Algeo counters with a guillotine that he doesn't get, and Brown ends up taking that whole round, that won't surprise me either, but it won't be enough to win the fight. Give me Algeo by decision as well. The 6-fight main card of UFC on ESPN 44 opens up with a lightweight matchup between Clay Guida and Rafa Garcia. Guida, the 41-year-old Chicago native, is 38-22 overall. He is 18-16 in the UFC. This will be his 35th UFC appearance. That places him right up there in the top 5 or 6 all-time, along with names that you would recognize. In a world where Donald Cerrone is in the UFC Hall of Fame, I imagine that Guida will be there as soon as he retires as well. But at any rate, he's 18-16 and he's coming off a win. He last appeared at UFC on ESPN Thompson versus Holland back in December, where he took a split decision over Scott Holtzman. He will look to make it 2 in a row against Garcia. The 28-year-old Mexican by way of Southern California is 14-3 overall. He is an even 3-3 since joining the UFC as a former standout in Combate Americas, now Combate Global. He also was coming off a win. It also was in December. He fought at UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Strickland on December 17th, taking a unanimous decision over Maheshate. Odds here heavily favor Garcia. Biggest favorite on the cards, or sorry, second biggest favorite on the card so far after Zak Cummings. Garcia minus 205, Guida plus 175. Keith, in talking about Guida, it the same as when I've had to preview fights of people like Jim Miller or Joe Lozon or Donald Cerrone, since we've been doing these shows together, longtime UFC mainstays who are now over 30 fights with the promotion, who are now pushing 40 or over 40. It comes down to, of the things that they were known for in their heyday, what do they really have left? Guida still has most of what he had in his prime, because even in his prime, and this is going to sound like me denigrating or insulting Guida, and it is not meant to be that way. Like the guy's a living legend. He's impossible not to like, but I always thought Guida was a little overrated as an action fighter.
Absolutely.
Like he bounced around a lot, and he had that trademark hair that I think it literally was deceptive and made it look like he was moving more than he was. A lot of cardio kickboxing type movement where he would throw feints and throw punches at air, kind of Caitlin Chukagian type style, and it worked on judges, and it sometimes worked to mystify his opponents. I mean, he beat Nate Diaz with like less actual work done on his opponent than just about anybody I can think of in that high level of fight in the UFC. At this point, I mean, what he has left is he did have incredible cardio in his heyday. Like that was never overstated. He really had better cardio than anybody he faced, so that he could do his like bouncing deceptive motion routine for 3 rounds, no problem, no question.
Yeah, look like Richard Simmons out there.
Yeah, just he had like a mane instead of a fro.
Yeah,
but I mean, he still has above average cardio for the division. I mean, he's still going 5-minute, 3 5-minute rounds. He went 3 5-minute rounds against Holtzman, and he was fine in the 3rd round. He lost to Mark O. Madsen, but that's not because he was the more tired guy. It's just because Madsen was bigger, stronger, better wrestler. Guida's wrestling was probably, I don't want to say underrated. It was underused in his heyday. I think he's actually become more willing to lean on it as he's gotten older.
Yeah, I think he's wrestle. He can, which is crazy.
Yeah, he's a good wrestler, and I think maybe here at age 40, now 41, he sees it as a way to win rounds and win fights and guard his gas tank that is finally starting to flag.
Yeah, I agree.
Those are things that I've been disappointed in Garcia's run in the UFC. I was excited for him to come to the UFC. I don't think I saw him as a future top 10 guy, just especially in like 2019, 2020, when he came across the lightweight division still might have been the best division in the promotion. But I saw him as like an exciting guy who would win more fights than he's lost. And instead, he's been a occasionally exciting guy that's won exactly as many fights as he's lost. And on Guida's current tour of kind of picking up unlikely wins against the bottom level of the division, Garcia is ripe for Guida to do the Guida act on. I mean, who's Guida beaten in the last couple of years? Holtzman, who's one of the lower level guys in the division. Leonardo Santos, who was the only guy in the division who's older than him. Yeah. And Michael Johnson, who, again, is probably the most inconsistent, talented fighter in UFC history. Garcia, of those archetypes, he falls into the Holtzman archetype. A pretty exciting fighter who's just not that good at anything.
He's a better wrestler, much better wrestler than Holtzman is. So.
Okay, agreed.
He's a good wrestler.
He's a better wrestler than Holtzman.
He doesn't hit as hard though.
No, he doesn't hit as hard as Holtzman, and I don't think he throws as much volume as he should on the feet a lot of the time. I can see Guida winning rounds whether it's on the feet or on the ground. Like if Guida can get Garcia down, this fight's over. Guida wins all 3 rounds. If Guida has trouble getting Garcia down, then it turns into, can Guida throw enough phantom volume on the feet to sway the judges? It becomes a closer affair, but I'm still leaning Guida that way. He's a big underdog here by the standards of this card. But give me the 41-year-old Clay Guida to get it done one more time and win a decision.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you picked Clay Guida because I was really on the fence, like sitting there scratching my head, saying like, "Am I really going to pick Clay Guida?" Because I've been waiting for like the bottom just to fall on him forever. Like I've been writing his like obituary many times, and I'm not going to get into all things. I think you hit everything perfectly. I mean, the thing that I always stress is that he can still wrestle. He took down Bobby Green twice. He took down Michael Johnson 3 times. He took down Scott Holtzman 4 times. And he's going to go hard for 15 minutes. He's a very mentally strong guy where he embraces the grind. Now, Garcia, he's not a great athlete, but he's pretty gritty. I think his volume's a little bit better than you say, but yeah, I think he's inconsistent though with it. Like sometimes he gets in the pocket, he's throwing down. Sometimes he's a little gun shy. He throws some hard looping shots, though he does lack power. He's pretty durable. He ate some big shots from like Nasrat Hakparas and just kept coming. And I think he's a very underrated wrestler. Good reactionary double. Good at turning the corner and driving through the hips. He will shoot without a setup, which won't work against a guy like Clay Guida. You're not going to just shoot it on him and dive in. He has like a very overreaching style to his takedown times, very like Michael Chiesa style, but he's relentless with this. And he does have like physical strength. He's a strong guy. Again, he's not a punching strong, but like a physically like brute. He can grab your leg and slam you. He got a nice submission against Jesse Rawson, and he showed up some good cardio against Natan Levy. I'm with you, man. This is like as pick 'em of a fight as they go. I think they're very similar the way they fight. My only concern, and everything you say, I totally agree. And I was so on the fence, and I'm like, man, am I going to take Clay Guida in 2023? My only concern is he's the guy that everything could fall apart overnight. It had nothing to do with, what he does in the cage. It's just your body eventually fails you. So because of that, I'm going to go with Garcia. But again, if I'm placing a bet, it's Guida. So I'll take Garcia by decision, but I have zero confidence in that pick. I think you're more confident in your pick of Guida than I am of the big favorite Garcia.
Like I sounded confident, but I'm terrified with that pick. We'll see.
You almost talked me into it.
Yeah. Next up on the UFC Kansas City main card is a men's bantamweight matchup between Pedro Munoz and Chris Gutierrez. Munoz, the 36-year-old Brazilian by way of Florida, who probably should stop calling himself the young Punisher at some point. At this point, he's just the Punisher. 19-7 with 2 no contests overall. He is 9-7 with 2 no contests in the UFC. An early UFC run saw him get all the way into the bantamweight title picture, but it has been rough sledding for him for the last 4 years almost. He is 1-4 with 1 no contest in his last 6 fights dating back to June of 2019. He appeared most recently at UFC 276 last July, where he dropped a somewhat competitive first round to Sean O'Malley before suffering a very severe eye poke in the second that rendered it a no contest. He's been out ever since. He returns here looking to get back into the win column, frankly, probably desperate to get back in the win column, and has a tall order in that regard, as Gutierrez is on one of the hottest streaks in the promotion period. The 31-year-old Dallas-Fort Worth area native is 19-4-2 overall. He is 7-1-1 in the UFC, but that reflects him dropping his UFC debut by by submission to Hani Barcelos all the way back in November of 2018. And since then, he is on an 8-fight unbeaten streak in one of the toughest divisions in the promotion to do that in. He is on a 4-fight win streak since his draw against Cody Durden back in August of 2020. He has a unanimous decision over Andre Ewell, a split decision over Felipe Diaz-Colares, a second-round TKO of Bakary Dana, and most recently at UFC 281 last November, a stunning first-round knockout of Frankie Edgar that sent the legend into retirement. Here, Gutierrez looking to extend that unbeaten streak to 9 straight. He is a pretty strong favorite to do so. Gutierrez is minus 210, Munoz plus 170. Keith, when we talk about fighters that are on impressive streaks and overdue for title consideration in their divisions, we talk about people like Beneil Dariush. We talk about Bilal Muhammad. We talked about Leon Edwards for the longest time. We talked about Merab Dvalishvili. Obviously, the last 2 of those finally got their chance and made good on it. But Chris Gutierrez is 7-0-1 in the UFC bantamweight division over the last 4 years. It doesn't get much tougher than that. And here, it's earned him a shot with a former top 5 guy who's on a miserable streak recently. Does he get it done here? And is this enough to earn him an actual, like, active top 10 fighter that maybe gets him into the title picture afterward?
Yeah, it's crazy is you talk about that run he's on. He's in an incredible run in the division. And I just looked up our rankings and sure enough, he's not even in the top 15. And that's no knock on the guy at all. Just like that's how insane the division. And now there's some guys that I would favor him over that if he fought them. So, you know, I just want to remind people that it's not Sherlock rankings is not based on, you know, who he thinks is better. It's more of based on what they've actually accomplished.
Sure.
But and we have guys that are, you know, that's Jose Aldo and TJ Dillashaw, who's recently retired, but we give this like window of time that we put guys, you know, we give them like a year, 18 months, something like that, before we remove them. So they'll be removed and everything. But this is a good fight. Munoz is he's an aggressive fighter who marches forward. He's about pace and output. Though he can be a little inconsistent with it. Like his fight against Jose Aldo, he was very gun shy against him. And then some of that might be, you know, you're looking at Jose Aldo and you're kind of fanboying a little bit. He's got a good jab. Everything works behind, you know, his jab, which he falls into the pocket and unloads power shots. Big thing about Pedro Munoz is always he's hittable. He's one of these guys. He's willing to eat a shot to deliver some of his own. He's had a good chin, but we've seen him be in some wars and it's time to take a toll on him. I mean, like Aljamain Sterling really teed off on him. He also kind of he's not the most technically sound. He's more of a little bit of a brawler, so he's like a bigger target than he needs to be. Though he does have some power. Kicks are a big weapon of his games. Good kicks to the body, calf kicks are a good thing. He doesn't check leg kicks. Like Aljamain Sterling really beat up with leg kicks. He also seems like he might have lost a step. Like he struggled with the speed of Dominic Cruz, which was surprising. And then even though Sean O'Malley was kind of cruising, like he wasn't really putting the pressure on him, was kind of like, I kind of felt like Sean O'Malley was overlooking him. When Sean O'Malley did let his hands go, in that fight was very short, but you know, he struggled with that. Another thing that's always hurt Pedro Munoz, even though when he was like a top 15 guy, is that, you know, he's a lesser athlete than the guys in that division. He's a good grappler, though I don't think he grapples enough. Really, the only time we see him grappling when he goes for that guillotine, but he has like a legendary guillotine. Now, Gutierrez, he's a very technically sound striker, a bit of a volume fighter, but also like a point fighter where he just he moves, lands. Good at like getting his opponents to chase him, good at setting traps by feints and drawing out the attacks to counter. just kind of touches and then moves. Doesn't unload power shots unless there's an opening, but he isn't really a big cracker for the division. Like, he's not like a big knockout guy. He does have a nice jab. I love his, like, that he goes to the body with his boxing. And then he has, like, the biggest part of his game is he's got incredible leg kicks. He finished Vince Morales with leg kicks. He had a beautiful stepping knee. I mean, sure, it was against Frankie Edgar and knocked out Frankie Edgar, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with who Frankie Edgar is, but that's a good part of Chris Gutierrez's game. He does struggle to stop takedowns. I go back to the Cody Durden fight. Like, Cody Durden dominated in the wrestling department. That it's not the worst. I know it was end up being a draw, but that's like the weakness. But I got to see him being able to stop takedowns against a strong wrestler. This is another fight. Just from the experience and like the dog of Munoz, I think this fight is much closer than the betting odds say. If I was betting, I would go with Munoz, but I am going to go with Gutierrez. I think he's faster. I think he's more technically sound. Doesn't have the same wear and tear that Munoz has. I think he batters Munoz with kicks and some knees, and I think he wins a decision.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at the line, but then the more I thought about it, the more we don't rank our picks on these things in order of confidence, but my pick of Gutierrez over Munoz here is one of my more confident picks on the card, just because the things that Munoz still does well just don't play well into Gutierrez's strengths and weaknesses. And I agree, like, Gutierrez he's going to be bigger. He's going to be younger, faster. If it turns into a brawl, I definitely trust his chin more than Munoz's at this point. I agree that O'Malley I don't know if he underestimated Munoz or was just trying to measure him for a highlight reel finish, because that whole first round he kind of cruised and then launched like a spinning hook kick in the last 10 seconds. I think he might have been just trying to measure him for like a bonus.
Yeah,
/ hype reel.
Yeah, that could have been the case. That's a good point.
But just Gutierrez has a hard ceiling in the division. Like, I kind of brought it up rhetorically, like, why don't we mention this guy in the same breath as other people that string together 6, 7, 8 fight unbeaten streaks in tough divisions? Well, one of the reasons is Gutierrez, most of his fights, and until his last couple of fights against Edgar and Danat, they'd all been decisions. They'd all been pretty competitive. So even though he was winning and winning and winning, there was never a moment that said, oh, I want to see this guy against, Aljamain Sterling or Petr Yan next week. Like, I feel as though Gutierrez is going to come up against a hard ceiling in the division, but wherever that ceiling is, I think it's higher than the 2023 version of Pedro Munoz. Give me Gutierrez to win a decision here, and probably for it not to be super exciting. I think he's just going to punish Munoz with leg kicks, be able to keep him on the outside. Gutierrez, he doesn't have great takedown defense, as you pointed out, but I don't think Munoz is going to be the one to take advantage of it. I think by the time Munoz is looking for takedowns, his lead leg is going to be compromised, and he's going to be dealing with a younger, bigger, stronger guy that, porous takedown defense or not, is just going to be able to keep away from him and keep beating on him. Give me Gutierrez by a pretty one-sided decision here. Next up, UFC Kansas City does not have an unranked heavyweight slobber knocker unless something goes wrong in this next fight here, as it is the light heavyweight debut of Tanner Boser against Ion Cutelaba. Boser, the 31-year-old Canadian, is 29-1 overall. He's 4-4 since joining the UFC back in 2019. He is coming off a loss. He appeared at UFC Fight Night Sandhagen versus Song last September, where he dropped a split decision to Rodrigo Nascimento. Prior to that, he had knocked out Ovin St. Preux all the way back in June of 2021. Boser, as a somewhat undersized heavyweight, had been talking about plans to drop to 205 for a couple of years now. He went from weighing 248 in his UFC debut, whittling his way down to the point that in the Nascimento fight, I believe he weighed in at like 228, which, I mean, Johnny Walker is heavier than that in the cage on fight night. So within
Alex Bahia might be heavy.
Yeah, within water cut distance of 205, and here he's finally making the leap. And waiting for him on the other side will be Pudilova. The 29-year-old Moldovan is 16-9-1 with 1 no contest overall. He's 5-8-1 in the UFC, and he is on a 3-fight losing streak. Those being a first-round submission loss to Ryan Spann last May, a first-round submission loss to Johnny Walker last September, and a second-round TKO loss to Kennedy Zechikwu last November. So Pudilova, in the midst of a pretty miserable run, albeit against fairly high-level competition, but he will look to turn it around here against the debuting Boser, and he is just the slightest of favorites to do so. Pudilova is minus 120, Boser minus 110. Keith, Tanner Boser entered the UFC, and like obviously his UFC run, it's 8 fights. He started off 3-1 in his first 4, then he's 1-3 in his last 4. Obviously showed plenty of upside right out of the gate because he was one of the first of the quote unquote young guys to refresh the heavyweight division back in 2019. I mean, he's still only 31. All of a sudden, like the old division in the UFC had a guy under 30 in it who was actually kind of spry and athletic. The whole thing about Boser, aside from him having a mullet and missing teeth, was the fact that he was light on his feet, you know, and like through fairly high volume, and people started wondering right away if he could make 205. He's finally decided to take that seriously, and it's not like he doesn't have experience against that type of fighter. I mean, he's already fought Felipe Lins, Ilir Latifi, and Ovince St. Preux, 3 guys who conducted most of their careers at light heavyweight. Here, I'm interested to see how it looks against Pudilova, because Pudilova's always been a 205er, but the one thing that I know he brings at a UFC level is he is strong as an ox. Like everything else about Ivan Pudilova as a fighter is terrible. Like he's extremely strong and he's a good offensive wrestler when he decides to use it. And pretty much everything else about him is terrible. I now think he might have the worst fight IQ of any fighter of his level of physical talent and raw skills in the UFC. He finds exotic and new ways to lose fights. Obviously, the biggest highlight on his highlight reel of terribleness would be the first Ankalaev fight, where he went out to act like he was hurt really badly and then was surprised when the referee was convinced that he was hurt really badly.
Because he's full of shit. He was hurt.
Yeah, part of the problem is that he really was hurt. But his real problem is that he is such a liability on the ground in terms of just submission defense is such a liability. At this point, he's 5-8-1 in the UFC, and of his losses, I mean, let's see, 8 losses. There are the 2 TKO losses to Ankalaev. There's the TKO loss to Zechikwu, and I think the rest of them are all submissions. And in every case, it's either somebody that took him down and was just able to effortlessly advance position, take his back, choke him out like Glover Teixeira, or people that he just blundered right into a guillotine or a back take like he did against Spann and Walker.
Yeah, he got submitted by Johnny Walker.
He got submitted by Johnny Walker. I mean, Boser is not... I mean, he's not likely to pursue that route to victory against Pudilova. He just hasn't shown much of his ground game in the UFC. But at his best, Boser wants to kind of like circle the outside, kick the legs, you throw his jab and 1-2, stay at range. And I think Pudilova is likely to oblige him with that kind of fight. It'll become an interesting fight if Pudilova tries to crowd him, mash him into the fence, like mug him with dirty boxing against the fence, try one of his like Greco upper body takedowns and like slam him down. But I don't trust Pudilova to try that. I think Pudilova is probably going to stay at range, get pot shotted, like probably try to throw like a low percentage head kick from time to time and just do silly Iwan Pudilova things. But this is about as soft a landing as Boser's going to find, moving from an easier division into a harder division. Just he's running into a guy that only has one or two tools that should really threaten him and hasn't shown himself consistently willing to leverage those tools. So give me Boser. I'm tempted to say that Boser, who has no submission since like his first 3 professional fights, finds some way to submit Pudilova when he makes a mistake. In fact, that's my pick. Yeah. Boser gets the best of things on the feet for most of 2 rounds. Pudilova blunders into a guillotine in the second round. Boser gets his first submission win in the UFC.
Yeah. I guess, and you said this is like as easy a matchup it can be for Boser. I mean, I guess he could have fought Ed Herman or Zak Cummings. Like he could have
I guess that's heavy. I guess that's a light heavyweight, isn't it?
Yeah. But he could have fought. Imagine that welterweight Zak Cummings takes on heavyweight and Boser at light heavyweight. Yeah, Iwan Pudilova. I mean, he's a wrestle boxer who he does his best work when he's in the pocket, throwing hard, tight shots. His left hook is definitely his best strike, but he's like a wild maniac, telegraphs the shots, loads up on everything. He does have power, but like for a guy that is like strong as ox, he's not knocking guys out with his power. You mentioned he can wrestle, and one thing I do like about Pudilova, he hits him a lot, which is you're absolutely right. But I like that he's using his wrestling more. Like he took down Devin Clark like 8 times. He took down Justin Jacoby 9 times. He took down Johnny Walker. Now, of course, he got submitted to that fight, but he doesn't really pace himself though. He loses position trying to advance. Like he tried to advance on Johnny Walker, but didn't have it and lost position because of it, which wasn't good, and got caught submission. He can grind a little in the clinch. Like that's probably his biggest strength, because then not often you're in a clinch and get submitted. But he is gassed out in many fights. To me, you talk about fight IQ, and yeah, he has a terrible fight IQ. But also, I think he's just a front runner. Like he's a guy that when everything's going well, he's a beast and he's a scary guy. But when he faces adversity, he just tends to crumble. Like that's just him. The first sign of, well, this ain't gonna be perfectly done, he loses. Tanner Boser, I don't know how I feel about him moving to 205. I don't think that's a good move for him. I don't think moving to 205 is the answer. I think he had a speed advantage at heavyweight, and that was his best weapon. He won't have a speed advantage at 205. He's a guy that moves a lot, and he works on a jab, and he point fights. And he's always kind of been a low power guy. Now that is your argument to move to 205. Like maybe at 205 he'll have more power, but I really don't think he will. He has good kicks. He's a weak defensive wrestler. He's struggled to get back to his feet. He's also showed no urgency. Like he's fought against, like I think about fights where he was losing against Ilya Latifi and Angelo Lowski, and he just like didn't pick up the pace or anything, try to get a stoppage, which I hate. In general, I just hate this fight altogether. I don't like either guy, and I don't know why I'm doing this, because every time I pick this guy, I lose. But when I look at these 2 guys and I say, who has like better skills, and I still don't think it's Pudilova. Like if Pudilova rushes Boser and you can get him down and land some big shots on top in fights controlled, he could win. And what the fuck am I doing? I think he does it. I don't know. Give me my decision. I think I don't know.
All right.
What am I doing?
Keith, banking on the fight IQ of Ivan Cutelaba. I don't like this fight either. We stay in the light heavyweight division for a matchup between Azamat Murzakanov and Dustin Jacoby. Murzakanov, the 36-year-old Russian by way of New Jersey, is 12-0 in his mixed martial arts career. He is a perfect 2-0 since joining the UFC out of the 2021 season of Dana White's Contender Series. There, he knocked out Matheus Scheffel in the first round. And since being in the UFC, he has a third-round TKO of Tafan and Chukwi last March, and then a third-round TKO of Devin Clark at UFC on ESPN Vera versus Cruz last August. He will look to keep the streak going. That'll be 3 straight, make it 4 straight, including his appearance on the Contender Series at the expense of Jacoby. Jacoby, 35-year-old Chicago native fighting out of Colorado, is 18-6-1 overall. He's 6-1-1 on this run in the UFC. He went 0-2 in the UFC all the way back in like 2011. Fought regionally for a while, went and had a full kickboxing career for like 4 years, came back to MMA and won his way into the UFC on the Contender Series back in 2020. Since then, he is 6-1-1 in the promotion, and he is coming off a loss. It was a split decision loss to Khalil Roundtree at UFC Fight Night Cater versus Allen last October. Prior to that, he had won 4 straight since a draw against Cutelaba back just under 2 years ago. Jacoby looking to get back in the win column here. He is a pretty comfortable favorite to do so. He is minus 200. Murzakanov plus 170. Keith, part of me wants to write off Murzakanov as an undersized, one-dimensional knockout artist who's 36 years old and got started in MMA way too late. But considering that our UFC middleweight champ up until about 48 hours ago could be described very much the same. Well, everything except the undersized part could be described very much the same way. Perhaps I shouldn't write him off too quickly. I mean, he didn't cross over to MMA in earnest until he was like 29 years old. And even after that, he had a couple of lengthy hiatuses, like more than a year off. Some of his own doing, other problems just to do with scheduling during those first couple of years of COVID. And then the UFC had a bunch of opponents fall out on him right after he got signed. This is a division where 36 is not that old.
No.
But this is the absolute worst kind of matchup for Murzakanov. Murzakanov, he does have a ton of power, but he is primarily a boxer, and Dustin Jacoby is much bigger than he is. Obviously a much more diverse striker. Speak of Alex Pereira, Dustin Jacoby fought for a glory, world title against Pereira, and Pereira might even be the only guy who beat Jacoby during that run in glory. He is a legit world-class kickboxer who all of a sudden has new life in MMA. But yeah, I think this is a bad matchup for Murzakanov. Jacoby is going to kick his legs early and often. He's been generally very successful at keeping shorter guys with shorter reach on the outside where he wants them. I know he just lost that split decision to Roundtree, but I thought Jacoby actually won that fight.
Yeah, so did I.
And then he had the weird split draw against Cutelaba. But honestly, I feel like Murzakanov maybe should be 8-0 in the UFC right now and probably would already have fought for a title if he were. So maybe this is the best thing for him after all. But I see this. It won't be as bad as him punishing Justin Ledet, but I think it'll feel kind of the same, where Murzakanov just has trouble getting into the range he wants to, and it just gets worse as the fight goes along, as Jacoby starts really, really punishing him with leg kicks, maybe opens up more with punches later, or with kicks to the body or head. But I have Jacoby winning this one comfortably, and I don't know what it looks like when Murzakanov loses because he never has, but give me Jacoby by a knockout here. I'm going to say he just frustrates him, keeps him at his preferred range, and maybe catches him overreaching, catches him slipping late in the fight. Give me Jacoby by a third round TKO.
Yeah, shout out to Joselyne Dead. I think the loser of this fight, I think that's Joselyne Dead here.
Okay. Houston's finest.
Oh, he's a Houston guy too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Dustin Jacoby. I like what he does. I think he's a high output striker, very technical sound kickboxer. Super calm on the feet. Like, just stands out to me just how relaxed he is. Moves really well. He's good at avoiding strikes first with his legs, and just not being there. And then second, he parries punches well, which I like. He's one of the few guys who parries punches in MMA. Even when he's hit, he has a great chin. I mean, like Clear Roundtree landed some big shots on him, and he just kept coming, kept moving forward, kept trying to take that ground. He's good at setting up traps and feints. I love the way how he's always attacking from different angles, cuts angles really well. Never on the center line. Works behind one of the best jabs in the game. Follows up with straight punches down the pipe. I like how he just kind of touches and then explodes when there's more openings. You mentioned his calf kicks. I mean, he murdered just with calf kicks alone. Some of the best calf kicks in the game. He's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, he and Pudilova really turned him into a takedown dummy. Made Ivan Pudilova look like Bo Nicolau out there. But he did.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, he did show that he is hard to hold down and showed off, some good power against Dong Mujon. Murzakanov, he's a southpaw who actually does move well too. A bit of low output on the feet, a lot of single strikes for my liking. Kind of dull you to sleep and then kind of burst attacks. So kind of fights. I shouldn't say single strike, like it fights and bursts. He's accurate though. He's got good power. He got 7 first round knockouts. He was hurting Devin Clark with every single shot he landed. He's got 3 TKOs in his career. He's got a flying KO in a fight, which I love.
Yeah, but
he tends to swing for the fences a lot, and he loads up a lot of stuff. He does, for a guy who's a technical, for good boxer, he throws a lot of heat makers. He looks pretty big overhand left a lot. One thing I disagree. I think he's a better wrestler than you think. Like he's got some takedowns. He's not simply like a one-dimensional. I think he can wrestle a little bit. He's got a submission on his record. But another concern, I thought he was gassing out against Tifon Chukri. Even though he knocked Chukri out in the 3rd round, he was slowing down in that fight. I think this fight is tougher than the betting line can say, just because of the power that Murzakanov has and that he actually probably is the better wrestler. Though I would be surprised if he's able to hold Jacoby down for long periods of time. I just think he's going to struggle to land shots on Jacoby. I think Jacoby's going to be avoiding a lot of his stuff by sidestepping those big haymakers, landing good counters. You talk about the calf kicks. I think that's going to be the biggest part of the game. I think Jacoby's going to cruise to a decision based on a heavy calf kicking game to Murzakanov. And so I want to take Jacoby to get a late stoppage, but I think Murzakanov can take a beat, and so I'll say he makes a decision. So give me Jacoby by decision.
The co-main event of UFC on ESPN 44 is a featherweight matchup between Edson Barboza and Billy Quarantillo. Barboza, the 37-year-old Brazilian, longtime American top team fixture, is 22-11 overall. He's 16-11 in the UFC. However, he is 2-3 since dropping to featherweight just a little under 3 years ago. He moved down from 155 pounds to 145. Since then, he has a controversial split decision loss to Dan Ige, wins over Makwan Amirkhani and Shane Burgos, and leading into this weekend, back-to-back losses to Giga Chikadze and Bryce Mitchell. The most recent of those, the Mitchell fight, was last March at UFC 272, where he lost a unanimous decision. He will try to get back in the win column against Quarantillo. The 34-year-old Floridian is 17-4 overall. He is 5-2 since joining the UFC out of the third season of Dana White's Contender Series. He is coming off a win. He appeared at UFC 282 in December, where he spoiled the featherweight debut of Alexander Hernandez, surviving a rough first round to win late in the second by TKO. Odds here favor Quarantillo. He is minus 170, Barboza plus 140 or so on the comeback. Keith, Edson Barboza, he's been in the UFC for, I think, 12 or 13 years at this point. The scouting report on the guy is written. He's not the greatest striker in MMA history. He's not the greatest striker in UFC history, but he's not far from the top. And just in terms of his highlight reel, he's on the Mount Rushmore. He's one of the most impressive strikers to watch, considering the whole body of work, whom he did it to and how, that we've ever seen in the sport. I mean, he's up there with, Anderson Silva is up there. I mean, you mentioned Francis Ngannou. Certainly, it's with Ngannou, it's a narrower tool set, but the results can't be argued with. But that's Barboza. What defined his ceiling against the best lightweights in the world, even in his prime, that's a known quantity as well. He could be taken down and was pretty basic on the ground. Donald Cerrone, Tony Ferguson, both tapped him out. He could be put on the back foot by an aggressive striker who was defensively sound and could stay inside his kicking range. Michael Johnson was the first to kind of lay out that blueprint. Johnson was the first guy to beat Barboza without the explicit threat of the takedown, and other people have been able to duplicate that performance since then. And increasingly so as the division has kind of caught up with him and as he has slowed down with age. So, I mean, that was always a known thing. He's a guy that he has a hell of a stack of bonuses to his name. Again, one of the most incredible highlight reels of any fighter in the history of the sport. But aside from occasional flirtations with the top 10, he was never really a title contender. But he's fallen off even from that, and dropping to 145 at age 35 or 34 or 35, whenever he did it, hasn't really helped. And his last two fights against Giga Chikadze and Bryce Mitchell have kind of shown the diminished version of him that we're getting at this point. Bryce Mitchell is a surprisingly effective offensive wrestler, but Barboza made him look like Khabib Nurmagomedov. Giga Chikadze is an outstanding kickboxer, but that's about as badly as we've seen Edson Barboza lose a straight up kickboxing match in MMA. He's slowed down. His gas tank is not as reliable at age 37 at 145 pounds as it was at age 25 at 155. So he's obviously in the last stage of his career. And I think Billy Quarantillo was kind of the wrong guy to face at that time, because if there's one thing I know about Quarantillo, one thing I can say, yeah, I know he's good at that at a UFC level. It's surviving an early onslaught from a more skilled athletic fighter and outlasting them and taking advantage of them later in the fight. He handed Spike Carlisle his first UFC loss that way. He spoiled Alexander Hernandez's featherweight debut that way. And that makes it a pretty obvious dynamic to me in this fight. Can Barboza put enough damage on Quarantillo early, either to finish the fight, to rack up a 10-8 round that throws a different light on the scoring, or to compromise him badly enough that Quarantillo can't mount that kind of comeback late? Because otherwise, I think I kind of know what I'm going to see. I'm going to see Barboza win the first round, probably show a few flashes of his vintage self, show us some semblance of his old blinding hand speed, maybe throw up a near miss with a kick that would have been a highlight reel finish a couple years ago, but not quite get the finish, and then Quarantillo to take over later. Quarantillo is a pretty good offensive wrestler, and I think, especially on a tired Barboza, can get takedowns. He's an aggressive striker, if not nearly as explosive or well-schooled as Barboza, and I think he could find success on the feet as well. I'm never going to count Barboza completely out, because even in this final stage of his career, that, like, I was there for his win over Shane Burgos, where Shane Burgos, a guy that normally is in blood and guts fights where you have to kill him to get him out of there, and Barboza, it was like he shot him with a tranquilizer dart. You know, just hit him with a little short punch, and about 2 seconds later, Burgos's body realized that the brain was not sending any more signals, and he collapsed, just unstrung. Certainly Barboza could do that to Quarantillo, but I don't think that's the main chance. I think Quarantillo wins a fun but kind of predictable come from behind fight here. Give me Quarantillo by decision.
Yeah, Edson Barboza, I agree with these. He's one of the greatest strikers in the history of the UFC and MMA. I mean, he's spectacular. And one thing that I think gets overshadowed, and we've talked about this in the past, is his actual boxing. I mean, because his kicking game is so dynamic, so legendary, that he doesn't get enough credit for how good of a boxer he is. I mean, he's got some fast hands. He's explosive, really crisp jab. His left hook to the body is one of the best strikes he has. His straight right is really good. I mean, that's what he hurt Burgos with. That's what he caught Americani with a couple times. Power hooks to the body, definitely one of the harder hitters. And then, of course, you know, his kicks are beyond legendary. Kicks everywhere, kicks to the legs, kicks to the body. The big concern I have about him is just the amount of damage he's taken over the years. I mean, he fights with Habib, fights with Kevin Lee, fights with Justin Gaethje and Giga Chikadze. And I mean, his chin can fall apart at any time. And he's never been an offensive wrestler. His defensive wrestler, I agree with you. He was weaker on the ground, but it's like really starting to fade. I mean, Bryce Mitchell, was taking him down over and over again. He struggled to get back up. To his defense, he did show some strong submission defense against Bryce Mitchell, which is an accomplishment. But also at his age, in going down in a weight class and be more dehydrated, cardio is always going to be a question mark for him. Now, Quarantillo, he's a very different fighter than Barboza. He's a high volume guy that just beats people with nonstop volume. You mentioned how he beat Alex Hernandez. It would just break in his will with his just keep coming at him. He gets in the pocket. He unloads power shots. He loves his overhand right. He hates being bullied on his back foot when he's lost fights. He hasn't been the guy to press forward. He can crack a little bit. He's got some power. He does this like flying knee. He loves using just to close the distance quickly. He's an underrated offensive wrestler. He's definitely more like a scrambler than he is a pure NCAA level wrestler. But he chains attacks together, and the best thing is his mindset. Like, he doesn't give up when he's on a takedown. Finds a way to get there. Now, he's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, I go back to the Gavin Tucker fight where Gavin Tucker took him down 7 times. Even like his last fight, Alex Hernandez took him down twice. But he has an aggressive offensive grappler. Like, he's got 5 submissions on his record. The one thing I don't like is he looks for something for the back instead of scramble back to his feet, and he's taking some damage being in a bad compromised position because of that. So I understand your pick with Quarantillo. I understand why he's a favorite, because there's definitely huge avenues of victory for him. One, if he turn into a wrestle heavy matchup that favors him pretty well. Also, if he can weather the early storm and then just do what he does, continue to increase the volume as Barboza starts slowing down, he can win that one. I'm going the other way. I'm taking Barboza. I think Barboza. I think he unloads on him. I think he unloads a jab on his face. I think he hits him with body shots. I think he throws those legendary kicks. And Quarantillo is so tough that I think he's going to walk through those and press forward and make it a war. I just think you can only eat toughest guy, the most durable guy, can only eat so many shots, even from a faded Edson Barbosa. And I think Barbosa eventually hits him with a shot, and Quarantillo's body just fails him. Give me Barbosa by second round TKO.
All right, so we have a little bit of disagreement. Second from the top at UFC on ESPN 44. That brings us to the main event of UFC on ESPN 44, a featherweight matchup between former champ Max Holloway and the fast-rising Arnold Allen. Holloway, the 31-year-old Hawaiian, is 23-7 overall. He is 19-7 since joining the UFC all the way back in February of 2012. So a little over 11 years that he's been with the promotion. He is coming off a loss. He dropped a unanimous decision to Alexander Volkanovski in the main event, in the co-main event of UFC 276 last July. That made him 0-3 in the trilogy with the current featherweight champ. Prior to that, he had back-to-back wins over Calvin Kattar and Yair Rodriguez. Holloway will look to get back into the win column here against Allen. The 29-year-old Brit is 19-1 overall. He is a perfect 10-0 in the UFC. He's on a 12-fight win streak overall. His last appearance was in October in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 213, where he defeated Kattar by a pretty anticlimactic knee injury just seconds into the second round there. But one way or the other, he is 10-0 in the UFC and has finally earned the kind of matchup that might propel him to his own title shot. He is not favored to get it done, however, as Holloway is minus 180 as the favorite, Allen plus 155 as the underdog here. Keith, Max Holloway is 0-3 against Alexander Volkanovski, and one of those three fights was razor close. Quite a few people think Holloway won it. I think you might be one of them. He has a pretty one-sided loss to Dustin Poirier up at lightweight. And aside from that, he has lorded over the 145-pound division for a few years now, and nobody's even really made it very close. He's still the ultimate test for any 145-pounder not named Alexander Volkanovski. Like, if Arnold Allen can win over Holloway in uncontroversial fashion, that is one hell of a statement. Or conversely, the other statement that might be made here is Holloway saying, I am too much for anybody in this division other than Volkanovski. And, oh, by the way, I'm younger than Volkanovski, and he keeps making noises about moving up in weight. So maybe he has another title reign ahead of him at some point. How do you see this fight playing out? Like, who makes their statement here?
Yeah, this is an incredible fight. I mean, it really is. And there's a lot of pressure on Max Holloway. I mean, he loses to Arnold Allen. I mean, he's really done in the division. He might be done in the division anyways. I mean, he really has to hope somebody beats Alex Volkanovski for him, so he can get a title shot again. He might really. I mean, I think the UFC would have been better to convince Max Holloway to go up to 155 and just take on fun fights, fight Justin Gaethje, fight rematch against Dustin Poirier, maybe a rematch against Conor. Like, that's probably better for him. But it's hard to, you see him lose to Alex Volkanovski really convincingly in the last fight. But, it's hard to have a lot of confidence in Max Holloway. But despite being outclassed by Alex Volkanovski, I still think Max Holloway is one of the best strikers in the UFC. Or just the sport in general. He's got great volume. He marches down his foe slowly, like taking the ground. The way he fights like a 1970s, the 1970s. Sorry, I'm fucking up. Like the 1700s, not that 1700s, like general, like trying to take a battlefield, like they're just slowly moving forward and not giving up that ground, like trying to win that center of the cage. He's a great boxer who's strong on both stances. He gets better every minute the fight goes on. Of course, now I'm not talking about when he fights Alex Volkanovski. Just that's his kryptonite. But he gets better every minute that goes along. He's always been my go-to example of what a builder is. Once he finds his range, he sets his traps, and he just gets stronger and stronger. He's long and lengthy, really good from the outside, but he keeps his opponents guessing because he doesn't just stay on the outside. Like, he'll get to that mid-range and box there, or he'll just get down in the pocket and throw it on that. Now, he has a great chin. He needs it because he does stand a little tall, and he appears to be losing a little bit of his head movement. Like, that's the one thing that stood out to me in the third fight against Volkanovski, is Volkanovski was landing a lot because Max wasn't moving his head enough. But when he lets his hands go, he's very accurate. His straight right is one of the best punches in the game. He attacks with combinations. That's one thing I was thinking Max Holloway than just like a single strike. A lot of variety. It seems like every fight has a new combination. I love that he targets the body. When he's not feeling himself, he just starts flowing so smoothly. I love when he lands a combo and then instantly changes stance and then attacks on the other side before he gets killed. Something that Joselyne, that's really good. A perfect example is when he was doing to Calvin Kattar. He was doing that a lot to Calvin Kattar. It wasn't letting Calvin Kattar get settled. Calvin Kattar is a good striker himself. Holloway, he just touches, waits for an opening, then explodes with shots. He's got, I'm describing before, like stunning power. He's not a one punch in the fight kind of puncher. He does have good takedown defense. He does well because when you're trying to take him down, he tries to sneak in like a 10-finger guillotine that gets people to jump off his legs. He obviously has a cardio go all 25 minutes, and he has a heart. I mean, he's taken beatings against Dustin Poirier, against Alex Volkanovski, and he kept battling through. Didn't get stopped. Arnold Allen is a guy that's really grown. I mean, just looks better and better every fight. He's southpaw, who's got good footwork, and lack of an example, but he kind of reminds me of Alex Volkanovski the way he fights. And that's basically on his movement. He moves laterally so well. He was using his footwork so well against Calvin Kattar to kind of get Calvin Kattar to chase him, and then just walking him right into power shots. He's fast. He's got no tells. Does really well to slide in the pocket and land power shots. Throw straight shots right down the pipe. His straight left is he can missile. I mean, it's beautiful. Very accurate. Sets up his shots with feints. He loves leading with his straight left. Like a lot of people, going through a jab, he leads with his power straight left. I like that he. I like how he'll attack and then he'll sidestep and then throw an uppercut for the different angle. He's kind of giving himself a different angle, which I like. Kind of keep himself on the center line. Underrated power. I mean, he hurt Sadiq Yusuf. He blasted Dan Hooker. He was teeing off on Calvin Kattar before that fight ended. So he's got some really underrated power. Defensively, he's a little weird. I mean, he fights behind a Philly shell, which is so rare in MMA, which don't see. It's going to take guys a little bit to learn how to kind of get around it. He's got a sneaky high kick. He is open to leg kicks. Sadiq Yusuf had a lot of success in that fight with kicking in his legs. But he's Britain guys who didn't, they're not known for their grappling, but he can grind in the fence. He can shoot. He's got some good entries. Another concern is he did fade a little late against Sadiq Yusuf, but that was a 15-minute fight, and he was fighting for 15 minutes, so it's not fair to go, oh, well, if he faded in 13, 14-minute mark of that fight, he'll fade in this one. It's different. You fight at a different pace when you have 2 minutes left. This is an amazing fight. A part of me doesn't even want to take a winner, and I just kind of want to sit back and just enjoy it, because that's how much I love this fight. I think they're both two of the best guys to watch. I'm really on the fence. I could see Allen using his movement, using his feints, and having that power advantage and giving Holloway a lot of problems, very similar to Alex Volkanovski. Not as fast as Alex Volkanovski, but the way he moves, and then he has more power than Alex Volkanovski. But I'm still going Holloway. I still think he has something left. I think we have an absolute war. I think this is going to be the fight of the night, the main event. I think we're going to have some really fun back and forth. I think people might be debating who won at the end of the night on Twitter, but I'll go with Holloway. I'll see who wins a split decision.
Yeah, I like everything you put down there. And by the way, your sound cleared up, so that's good.
Yeah, so it's
yeah.
To the computer.
Yeah, like we just finished talking about Edson Barboza, where Barboza, he's definitely one of the greatest strikers in MMA history, and then his highlight reel is practically unparalleled. Holloway doesn't have anywhere near the highlight reel just because the things he does don't fit into a GIF. He's not a one-shot knockout guy. He's not a spinning wheel kick guy. No. You can't compress him punching Calvin Kattar 300 times into a GIF. Like,
no, that's true. Good point.
Even though historically Holloway a greater, he would be higher on my list of greatest MMA strikers of all time than Barboza, even though he'd be lower on the highlight reel list.
Yeah, of course.
But nonetheless, there are some things he does that I can watch over and over again. You mentioned his stance switching, and it's a particular thing he does. Like when he really starts flowing, like while coming forward, he will start throwing 5, 6, 7 punch combinations where he throws in a kick and disguises his stance switch behind the kick. He'll like throw a kick with his right leg and just land with that in his plant foot, and all of a sudden he's in southpaw.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. And to an opponent, it must just feel like getting run over by a bulldozer or like a big combine harvester or something. He is absolutely a builder. You pointed that out. His signature wins are his back-to-back wins over Jose Aldo, but it's worth noting that Aldo won the first round of both of those fights because one, Aldo was not that far from his prime, and he himself is one of the greatest strikers in MMA history. And two, because Holloway, he's a builder. He's not a slow starter so much as he gets he builds in confidence, and he really finds his rhythm kind of starting in the second round of his fights. If ever there was one, he's a guy that was built for 5-round fights, and that's shown. It's surprising for a guy who has as much obvious difficulty making weight as he does, that he has the kind of cardio he does. You would expect there to be some kind of compromise there. We're talking about a guy who had a fight scrapped because he looked so ill, like walking around during fight week, like he was half dead on his feet. We're talking about a guy who tried to save the UFC's New York card and couldn't even make lightweight on short notice because he walks around admittedly at like 190 pounds. You would think there would be some kind of compromise there to be able to function over 5 rounds, but no, he remains a builder. I think he owns right now 3 of the 4 highest landed strike totals in UFC history. Like 3 of the 4 highest are him. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And he's not doing it against chumps. He's doing it against some of the other best strikers in the sport.
Yeah. What was it? Kattar?
Rodriguez, Ortega.
Yeah. Jeez. That's fucking good.
Like he's doing these things to some of the other best strikers in the sport, which is the stunning thing. And unless that top gear is starting to slip, the durability, the cardio, the reflexes, the hand-eye coordination, unless any of that is starting to starting to slip as one of the most weathered 31-year-olds the sport has ever seen, unless that is the case, Allen looks like a prime candidate to be the next guy on that list. Another guy that looks like one of the best strikers in the division, one of the best boxers in the division, who has started to flash impressive power as well. But he's not Alexander Volkanovski. And because of that, nobody else has proven they can even hang with Holloway for very long. He overwhelms them all. Yeah, I agree with your breakdown here. It should be a really exciting fight. And that's the thing about Holloway's fights. He has some of the most exciting one-sided fights we've ever seen. Like the Kattar fight was fun the whole time, even though in hindsight, Holloway washed him. The Ortega fight was incredibly fun, even though only one of the rounds was even really close. You know, I expect this will be an incredibly fun fight. I think Allen will have his moments of offense. He's an incredibly accurate puncher. And Holloway's always been kind of hittable. Just, you know, he wins by outlanding his opponents. I think he's going to do it again here. I'm with you. This, if anything other than our men's flyweight matchup wins fight of the night, this is one where I won't be mad if this is the one. Otherwise, it'll probably be that that Royval versus Nicolau deserved it and something else just stole it away. But here, yeah, this might be our fight of the night, and I'm gonna guess it's another case of Max Holloway just showing that he's a truly unique talent in the history of the sport. Give me Holloway by decision. And that has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 44, Holloway versus Allen, which takes place on Saturday in Kansas City. I've been your host, Ben Duffy. He has been Keith Shillan. We apologize for that. Probably about 30 minutes of audio difficulties. It looks as though we got them solved, so it shouldn't be an issue going forward. But yeah, like seems like the audio on those couple of fights is crackly, but can be understood. So again, apologies for that. Thanks for bearing with us. If this was your first time watching one of our programs, first of all, thank you. Apologies again for those audio difficulties. Please do like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We'd love to hear your takes on these fights. If you think any of our picks are way out there, let us know. If you're right and we're wrong, we will definitely give you your proper credit. But most importantly, join us for the recap. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page, usually about 10 minutes after the main event, where we will break down all of these fights in reverse order of how you just heard them. We will start from the headliner, go all the way down to the first prelim. We'll talk about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. And the live chat is open that whole time. So we are taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time, kind of going back and forth with you. We have a growing community of friends who come and hang out with us after the fights, and we would love you to join them. In between then and now, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy the fights.